Good afternoon. The board is in executive session and will return shortly. They apologize for any delay, and they will be back soon. Thank you.
Rob's gonna tell jokes now. Rob will entertain us with.
Hey, we can serenade away for sure.
Rob will entertain us between now and then. Any dates? You can vote Juliet. You are 100%. I've always said that about you. You were my first and battery on
This is CPS thing too, but same for foundation.
of voting members, I'm sorry, Rob, are you ready? Seeing a quorum of voting members, I call the January 27th Cincinnati School Board meeting to order. Jen, can we do a roll call vote?
Mr. Craig?
Here.
Mr. Crossan?
Here.
Mr. Lindy?
Here.
Ms. Mapp?
Here.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Here.
Vice President Bolton?
Present.
President Moffitt?
Here. Let's see, Superintendent Murphy. Oh, wait. Hold on, I guess it's, okay. Superintendent Murphy. Please introduce our wonderful students from the Academy of World Languages that will be virtually leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just tell us what school.
Superintendent Murphy, where was that lovely performance from? Go ahead, I'm sorry, I took your thunder. I took your thunder. Where were those students from? Is your mic on?
Those students were from the Academy of World Languages, where Jackie Rowetter is the principal.
Thank you. Tell them thank you. Treasurer Wagner? I think I'm a little out of order. Do we need to call roll again?
We called roll. Now we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Second.
Second.
Second vote.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Crossan?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice President Bolton?
Yes.
President Moffitt?
Yes. Vice President Bolton, would you explain the hearing of the public?
I feel so
So
bad for
sorry,
your
everybody.
voice. Thank you very much, yes. Members of the public who are online and wish to speak during our hearing of the public this evening may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for your requests for 5 minutes. If you would like a direct response to your questions, please make sure to share your name, your affiliation, the district, and affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information. You're on the second page.
So I will begin old business by talking about our Health and Safety Committee. Board members, we talked at a meeting around the elimination of the Health and Safety Committee. In front of you, you should have the work plan for what the Health and Safety Committee involved. And we talked about elimination of that committee and including those work plan items in with the Student Achievement Committee of the Whole. So let's just have a little bit of discussion around that. We didn't make a decision. I'm open for any thoughts. Does everyone have their Health and Safety Committee work plan? Looks like this. What are your thoughts?
Madam President? Reflecting on the discussion that we did have, and it was a big deal about eliminating that that committee. I think there were a couple of things that were said. One is periodically have an ad hoc committee that might have an opportunity to talk about particular items that were in the jurisdiction of health and safety. And I think another option that was discussed was to have perhaps extend our committee of the whole meetings from 90 by an extra 30 minutes and try to incorporate more regularly the issues in health and safety into those efforts that are really focused on not only academic achievement, but also whole child and best interest of our students. So of those two, I kind of like personally, I like the extending the committee of the whole, largely because I think all of these topics, maybe now more than ever, seem to be particularly relevant.
Board Member Weinberg.
Yes, I would just like to add as well, I think every single topic that we have here listed for health and safety, they are all big topics, key topics, and I think it would be wise to definitely keep them into consideration, especially if we're going to extend out our meeting, the CAL meeting. Since we brought up the discussion of ending the committee, I still think that those topics should definitely go over onto that side. So I would be in agreement with Vice President Bolton.
Any other board member discussion? Just for the public, I'm going to give you a list of some of the topics that are on health and safety so that you'll have an idea of what we're talking about. So for February's discussion, this is around mental health, resource coordination, school resource officers, student code of conduct, discipline, and bullying data. April, the Hamilton County Addiction Response Committee, mental health, physical health, and nutrition. June, student code of conduct again, pedestrian safety, mental health, and gun safety. August, health, vision and dental safety, athletics, extracurriculars, and menstrual health. October, community learning centers, sexual abuse, discrimination, and harassment. In December, student discipline data again, pedestrian safety, and in-school safety lockdown information. So what I'm hearing is that there is agreement to extend the Student Achievement Committee of the Whole, which meets once a month, by 30 minutes to incorporate the monthly or the quarterly topic for health and safety. Mr. Lundy.
Thank you, President Moffitt. For my part, I would be fine sunsetting the committee and then leaving open whether content warranted extending a given CAL by 30 minutes. My reasoning is that, and I shared this at our organizational meeting, the committee came from an old strategic plan where there was a match between committees and parts of the strategic plan. And this was a part of the strategic plan that's no longer in effect. So it's like a carryover that has assumed, new functions, but has outlived the original genesis. And I think that, we're there. I'm all for us spending less time in meetings, particularly for our staff. And so I think that if we need the time, we would do it. But I would caution against creating a default expectation that we're always going to have 30 minutes on additional topics.
Any other conversation around that discussion? Board Member Craig.
So I think extending as necessary, I think is valid to Board Member Lindy's point of that there may be times where while we may have had it scheduled under the old health and safety plan, it may not necessarily be something we would have an update on at this point. I think this may be a topic, though, for me in a lot of ways, it may just require us to have someone for our CAL meetings really dedicated to looking at and working with the superintendent to kind of decide what those agenda might look like. Because I do think part of the difference is how you treat it as a separate committee, where you would say we have to have something for each meeting or else we don't have a point of meeting, is very different from whether it's a necessity to talk about at that time. And because we're already putting so much into our CAL meetings and we're already overusing the space within our CAL meetings for other things, it may become necessary to have someone just kind of coordinate with the superintendent an agenda. I think this was originally the point of that, merging those and having at the time, Board Member Jones work to do that. This may be more present that we do that, given that we're going to try and add new topics into the CAL meeting. So, I mean, I think that's makes more sense. So I'm fine with us doing it that way. I think it just makes more sense to have someone at least trying to coordinate or come up with what that looks like for meetings, because I do think there would be times where we just may not need to talk about the same things on the same schedule as it always was done in health and safety. And again, I think that, and sometimes we may need to talk about more of it.
Any other discussion? And I will remind you, these meetings had gotten decreased to quarterly, so it wouldn't be a monthly topic for health and safety, to have a health and safety topic. And I completely agree that there may not necessarily need to be discussion around some of these topics, and they could easily be incorporated. So does this need to go to policy committee to adjust the bylaws?
I wouldn't think that it has to, since the board decided to eliminate the committee in our organizational meeting. I don't think it has to go back to policy. I think maybe policy has to rewrite some parts of the bylaws to facilitate the increase for the committee of the whole and the elimination of health and safety, but not for any major deliberation, but maybe a rewrite.
Okay. So I know policy is meeting next week. Can we give this to the policy?
Friday.
Excuse me. Policy is meeting on Friday. So can we give this to you all to maybe adjust the bylaws as needed?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. So we're going to move down to, under old business, superintendent evaluation policy. And I'm going to adjust that a little bit because from our understanding, I thought that we needed to still work on the policy. We don't need to work on it, but we do need to discuss the goals of the superintendent. So we're going to modify that just a little bit. You do have the policy in front of you, board members, but we're going to look at the goals of the superintendent that have been submitted by Superintendent Murphy. Superintendent Murphy, do you mind expanding just a little bit publicly around what you've submitted for your goals and your evaluation?
Yes, ma'am. I think what I submitted with respect to my goals are really pieces done in two parts. The first part are 5 critical goals taken from our current strategic plan, our current goals and guardrails. All of them have to do with academic outcomes for our students, starting with 3rd grade reading, looking at Algebra 1, looking at our students who are earning College Credit Plus, considering our students who are earning workforce credentials, and improving our graduation rate. The second aspect of that has to do with the standards for all superintendents across Ohio, and there are 5 broad categories there for your consideration, and they include vision, continuous improvement, and having a focus on the district's work. A second is communication and collaboration. Third is policies and governance and making sure that I am following those policies and that governance that is set by the board. Instruction, I believe we're hitting that in the goals and guardrails in our strategic plan. And then the 5th and final one is resources.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions or comments? Board Member Craig.
So let me start by saying I appreciate you bringing this to us and trying to get this done in accordance to the direction that we kind of agreed to as part of the work we're doing with you to evaluate and assess your work in the district. I think the 2 thoughts that I have is just one, and I think it's something it's not a mystery, is the first one of the goals that was set just for us to define something that would be what we would say is your measurable growth towards that longer-term goal for the first year. And I say that in also recognizing that there's some things that you maybe have had a little bit more influence on and other things that has been a little bit different. And so I think that's for you to kind of maybe give us, if there's a certain number that you think there's each year, if you think there's 1 year that'll be, first year might be more growth or less growth, whatever the case may be. I think that's the only thing I would add to that. And then I also want to appreciate the fact that you went to a somewhat similar or consistent method that the board has used to evaluate the superintendent over the last couple of years, and allows us to be more consistent in how we do the performance. I think one of the things we took pride in is adding in performance and student outcomes into the process. It's one of the things that we were advised on by the Council of Great City Schools. It's one of the things we worked really hard on to determine what those things look like. And it's a good way to measure the true success of the district, is how our students do. So I appreciate you for taking that time to add those in and use a somewhat more consistent method to what we were already doing with our process.
Any other board member? Board Member Weinberg?
Yes, I'll be quick. Thank you, Superintendent, for providing these. The only thing that I would maybe suggest is for Goal 1, I noticed that you have June of 2027, and then all the others are 2025. Maybe if there's a possibility of giving us a percentage for that, and maybe seeing if that could fit in so that it matches the rest of the others. Thank you.
Vice President Bolden?
I appreciate the use and the selection of the state standards for superintendents, because there's also comparative work done throughout the state if you use those standards to kind of measure where we are versus where other superintendents might be, or how people in different districts prioritize those standards. So I think that's useful for us as well. So I appreciate you adding that. And also, as Member Craig said, keeping some degree of standardization over time.
Any other board member questions, concerns, or need for clarification? Board Member Lindy?
Thanks, President Moffett. I have a couple, and if possible, would love just a minute or two to look a few things up also. I really appreciate receiving these, and I want to give this a little thought. So I'm happy to share a couple questions now. I'm happy to let somebody else go. I could just use a few minutes to look up a couple. What I'm trying to do is see how we did this past year on some of these things, because some of the numbers track to what I remember, but some I wanted to double check. So is it better for me to go now in part, or better to have somebody else go and I can come back?
Well, perhaps start and then
Start. We're
you
going
can
to
always
start.
ask a
Okay,
question.
great. So I think that this, I think this really matters, and I'm so happy to see these, and I think this is a great step in a good direction. I think that the most important job we have is making sure that good student learning is happening, and that we are creating more opportunities for kids in the long run because of what they learn at school in CPS. I think the best lever we have to do that as a school board is who we hire as superintendent and how we hold that person accountable. So I think this is a great use of time, and I'm delighted that we have 5 goals. When I joined the board, there was a page that had, I believe, more than 25 different goals on it, some of which were themselves composites of multiple submeasures. And I've never met a human who can focus on 37 or 38 different things at once. So I think this is great that there are only 5 on it. I think it's great that we're talking about it. I think it's great that they're tied to the goals and guardrails. I think the areas where I have some questions are in 2 or 3 categories. I think the first one is about scoring. One of the things that is different about the evaluation policy that we passed at the very end of '24 that makes it different from past versions is that it requires the superintendent and the board to collaborate on what the scoring system should be for the evaluation. So just to make this concrete, let's say that the superintendent hits 60%, 61% on goal 1, hits the target on the second goal and the third goal, but misses the target on the next 2. Is that a great evaluation? Is that a terrible evaluation? Is that somewhere in the middle? I think the idea with the new evaluation policy is to decide in advance how we're going to score the results when they come back, so that there are no surprises for the superintendent, for the board, for the public, and we're all really clear on what good, meaningful progress will be. And so I would like us to have something that we pass tonight that specifies, say that the superintendent gets 80% of the way there on these goals. That's a satisfactory evaluation. The superintendent gets less than 80% of the way there. It is an unsatisfactory evaluation. Like, I think that should, and if that sounds like that's not ambitious enough, let's ratchet it up to 90. If that sounds like that's too ambitious, let's ratchet it down. But I think that we owe it, I think, to the superintendent to provide clarity for her on what our expectations are. And I think we owe it to the public to provide transparency to them on what our expectations are going to be too. And so what I feel quite strongly about is that we do this and we do it in public and we do it before we get underway. What I don't feel strongly about is how we set that scoring system. I think there are a lot of good ways to do it, and I'm genuinely open to lots of different ideas. But I think we need to do that part of the system. And I don't hold this against the superintendent. This is brand new. We have never done this before. But it is important. And so I'd like that to be a part of the conversation. The other thing I'll mention too is that part of the evaluation policy that we passed says, and I'll read this, I'm in part 2, goals will include a focus on improving opportunities for African American students, Latinx students, students of color, and low-income students. And so I think the goals that, oh, nope, just kidding, goals 4, so this is just another way of saying the superintendent did a nice job because the goals that are on here, the third and the fourth one, clearly do what I was referencing. So that's great. I need to do a little research, but that's the scoring system, I think, is my big one.
Okay, so, give me was there a question in there you said that you wanted to find out some measurement goals. You were looking up some historical data. Did you want to ask the superintendent?
No, I think
where we were?
on the public voting of the scoring system, I don't need the recommendation to be mine. I think it could come from the superintendent, and we could start with that. I mean, we wrote this on purpose to encourage collaboration. There may be another board member who has an idea, but when we approve this, I think we need to approve how we're going to score it at the end of the year.
Well, I think that we start by somebody just throwing something out. Superintendent Murphy, do you happen to have, since it is around your evaluation and this is brand new, something that we have not done before, do you happen to have a baseline of where you would like us to measure you?
May I ask how the 80%, say that's the number, plays out, or if it's even being considered around the goals and guardrail strategic plan and the superintendent standards from the state, or no?
You can definitely ask that question. I'm looking to other board members for input. Yes, Board Member Craig.
I can say what was done before was that we had certain markers, and so if you hit those markers from the student achievement numbers, whatever, that were part of the first hour, the part that was for the state evaluation was just a 1 through 5 scale. So, at that point, it's not really you just get a score on that scale. We then did some kind of percentages to reach, but at the end goal was satisfactory, unsatisfactory rating. I don't know if that's what we want to do again, or if we want to give some type of pure score, which is maybe more to Board Member Lindy's question as to what the end thing looks like if we're measuring success of in the role of superintendent. But that was what we historically did, is we took these different parts, gave a percentage that was dedicated to that. The scores that came from the state standards gave a percentage to that, as to reach the final score that would determine your, at that time, I think it was successful or unsuccessful, or the two two options we had.
That's helpful. To that, I would say, and I referenced a couple of things. One, how our principals are evaluated partially on state test scores, but also on performance. The same would be true with central office directors, managers, et cetera. There is a goal portion where they write 3 goals. Of course, that's pertinent and specific to the work that they do, may or may not be instructionally related, but then there is a competency part that I aligned to these standards. And so I don't know if there's any consideration for 50% and 50%, because while I appreciate the comment about focusing on these 5, the job is really much, much, much bigger than that. So it's not possible for me to just concentrate on these 5. My example of that, which I've shared before, is transportation is not a goal, an instructional goal. However, if we don't get the children to school, then we can't get them in the classroom. So that would be my most immediate feedback.
Board Member Matt.
Yes, thank you. So I'll be brief. Thank you for providing us with the presentation of your goals for the evaluation process. I am appreciative of the balance we talked about, working collaboratively. So you've identified a way, right, for it to have those measurables as well as have kind of an evaluation based off the state standard. So I appreciate that, and I hope that you feel confident about this as well. My question is, as it pertains to the indicators or the benchmarks relative to the goal that you've established, can you explain to us how you identified where those, I guess, final benchmarks would be to help us with the evaluation process? Like, what was the rationale around that? And then also, is it in any way comparable to what you've noticed in terms of other districts for their performance measures?
I've not compared this to any other district at all. Where I got this from is what the board has already approved and set to be the measure in this given period of time. So these are not X to Y values that I created myself. I pulled them based on what the guidance was from the school board.
Okay. And so I just wanted to make sure, because I know that we discussed with the interim goals, right? These would be considered your interim goals, correct? Or you've established a completely,
So
I'm just trying to make sure I have clear.
So with the goals and guardrails, if you look at the strategic plan, kind of like the goal 1 with third grade reading, some of those go out through June 2027. You'll see some, for example, Wednesday, we did a presentation on attendance. Well, I didn't include that here, but on the goals and guardrails with the strategic plan, that's scheduled to end May 2025. So I just pulled these from the strategic plan, the goals and guardrails as written. I didn't create these, so to speak. I just selected.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. So what I'm hearing you say, this is an opportunity to maintain some consistency in terms of the measurable goals that we've already established as a district.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then just lastly, could you provide some clarity? I think you may have explained it before, but just discussing the graduation rate with an increase of 85% and maybe where we are right now, and if that's something that could possibly be included in the goal so that we are aware of.
Yes, definitely. I do have that. I will edit this so that it's spelled out what the X to Y is.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Lindy.
Thank you for the time to go look a couple of things up. I promise we'll come back to, I'll share that in just a second, but I was trying to think of a really simple way to make sure that we're announcing in advance and by public vote how we're going to score the results when they come back. There are very complicated ways that we could do this. I think I'm guilty of trying to make this very complicated, trying to make it simple, but making it complicated in the past. Here's what I'm wondering, and again, the thing I want to advocate as strongly as I can for is that we make something clear in public. Here's a place to start. I'm very willing to think about different offers, but the superintendent's evaluation for school year 24-25 will be a satisfactory one if two things are true. The first is that when we look at all these measurable goals, on average, the superintendent gets 80% of the way there. These are beautifully written because they have a from and a to. So you can imagine that as a distance on a line, get 80% of the way there. You can imagine doing that across all of them on average, 80% of the way there. So superintendent's evaluation is satisfactory if two things are true. First, 80% of the way there on the goals. And then second, if we do for the superintendent standards what we've done in the past, what this looks like is every board member taking a survey where for each of the different competencies, this is what Mr. Craig was referencing, I think, board members are giving a rating from like a 1 low to 5 high. We could say that the second thing that has to be true is that on average, the superintendent has to average blank. I don't know what the number is. You all tell me. But we're saying it's a satisfactory year if you get 80% of the way there on the 5 goals, and the average on the competencies across all the board members is some number between, it's got to be between 1 and 5. But that would keep it really simple. It would be really clear. There would be no surprises. And then whatever the evaluation is, it's based on what the results are. And I think that models, I think, good leadership and accountability across the board. But again, I'm open to feedback.
Board Member Crossett.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly good proposal and fairly simple enough. I think we do have in our policy that 60% of the evaluation would be on whether or not the average of 80% would count for 60%. And then we have to have some check-ins this spring for that 10%. I think it's important to understand that 10% is not based on the results. It's based on whether we're checking in to see how it's going. And then that would leave 30% for the state standards. And I think if to do a simple 1 through 5 evaluation, I'm assuming 5 would be good and 1 would be bad. And maybe the average score of that needs to be around 3.5 or something. And it's the first year. This is our first year in attempt at that. We've got 2 more years of contract after that. We're basing the academic outcome goals on where possible, we're going to look at a 3-year average. So it really doesn't have to be perfect this first year. I think the idea that we have something and we start with it and it's a starting point, and then we can always change the scoring for future years based on how well we think this does in terms of giving a true representation of performance. So I would be okay with something fairly simple like that not only could we, I think one thing about performance evaluations, if they're too complicated and the superintendent can't really think about them when she's driving in her car, then it's too complicated. So the simpler, the better, for what that's worth.
Vice President Bowen.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate this discussion. In fairness to the public that's sitting through this, the superintendent has shared her proposed goals, and I think we have to figure out if we are accepting those goals. I have a question. Are we not going to accept them until we figured out the scoring? Is that the member Lindy's position?
So the policy says that we have to vote on the scoring the same time that we vote on the goals.
Okay. So it's that policy that I think was going to go back to policy, but okay.
I think that's different from my understanding of the meeting.
I understand. My issue is, having lived through the last evaluation, almost anybody could have gotten a satisfactory score because of the math. And I don't want to, right now, on the fly, buy into any mathematical equation, because the reality is, because of so many other things came up, we were unable to do this in executive session tonight, which is where this kind of work needs to be happening. But I have great reservations about, I'm not confident yet about who's doing which math for what, because we lived through the last time, and math can really undo a great evaluation or prevent a good evaluation. So I'm just concerned about that.
So I'm going to just offer my reflection around what you've shared. I'm a little uncomfortable with regard to the 80% as a numerical value, similar to what you've shared, but I think I'm getting a little confused because previously we had the superintendent do a self-evaluation in our previous evaluations. And then that, I don't want to say it impacted, but it could influence some of how we're defining the success of the goals. So I don't see that part in here under the self-assessment piece that we have had previously. I also believe that I think it's a little tough to go between quantitative and qualitative. And it feels like the state standards are more satisfactory, unsatisfactory, more just, hey, this is what it is, with no numerical assessment versus the goals that have that. So I guess I'm looking at, are you saying 80% of each goal? Or are you suggesting 80% of all the goals in totality? So all 5 goals need to be averaged to 80% completion. Or if there is 1, 2, 3 goals that are at 78%, that's deemed as failure. So I'm gonna just summarize. I'm having some problems with the 80% as a number, as a baseline number. I'm also having some difficulty on how are we saying all of these goals numerically in totality, or are we saying individual? And then how are we evaluating something that is numerical in this side with regard to the goals and the completion there, and the simple, satisfactory, unsatisfactory with regard to the state standards? I think we need to be a little bit more consistent. So I also think that there should be space for, and I think that I looked here, there's a little bit of space for board member evaluation, but I don't see under the policy, it says, should the board choose to include other components in the annual evaluation, which is inclusive of board member surveys and surveys completed by other stakeholders. I don't see a weight there. So that sounds to me like there should be some quantitative measurement in the evaluation that has weight and significance to the superintendent evaluation, yet it doesn't reflect in the evaluation percentages. So I'm a little conflicted because I see some inconsistencies with regard to part 2 of the content that we're using to measure, that I think needs to be ironed out a little bit more succinctly myself. So I also am concerned that we're talking about accepting the goals at the same time as evaluating, when we were supposed to have completed this part by January 31st. So are we offering an exception for this particular year, in part because this has been a very different year? I think that I would like to see weight given for closing a $90 million gap more heavily than I would see getting to completion of all these goals. They're very important, but I think that maybe for this first year, there are some things that are not incorporated, that are unusual circumstances, to the superintendent's point of being able to impact things that impact education and getting to the goals successfully. We're not incorporating those things, and I hate to just see it be a pass-fail simply when it's really so much more to improving the student outcomes. So that's just where I'll leave that a little bit there. Yes, sir. Board Member Linda.
No, I actually think I agree with almost everything you said. I think I'm going to go in reverse order, just the piece about the budget gap. We wrote this on purpose to be flexible enough for future iterations of the board to align it to what matters most to the district. So if the board, and it's supposed to be collaborative, so like ideally the superintendent would agree, but like if we can agree that one of the things that matters most in this year, and I think this makes a lot of sense, is around navigating a budget process, closing, like, great, let's put it on there. I think that it's designed to be flexible enough to do that. I think it's a great add. It could be, that could be a great thing to add. I think the other things, just to mention quickly, you asked about what happens if one goal is 78, another goal is 78, one goal is 81, like I'm open, really. Like, I think my preference would be, let's do the one that is easiest to administer and lets the superintendent put her best foot forward. But I think it's whatever we agree on. I think the thing that's important is just that it be clear, and it be clear in advance, rather than when the year is over and people have different understandings of what good means. And then the last thing about the survey, my experience in the last 5 years is that we make these surveys quite quantitative in the way that we have everybody take the survey, through what we aggregate the results. We've often used them, this is not with this superintendent necessarily, but when we're trying to decide what % of a performance increase should someone get, we'll use like what % of a perfect score did they get on the survey and map that directly onto what % of the possible increase do they get. So I think I'm less worried about that part, just because I think we've got some good muscle built around how to do that in a thoughtful way. But I think, those are the other thoughts that I have. We can talk about this or not talk about this, but the other thing I've not brought up is just whether these are the right targets or not. And I want to just mention that briefly, because the 61% third grade reading, our score last year was 57%. And so to get from 57 to 61 in 3 years feels like a goal that's not high enough. Like, I would want to raise that. Similarly, on Algebra 1, our result last year was 38, and this is aiming to improve that by 40%. That's a little over 1.5 points. I think we should be setting a higher bar than that for this year. And so I think there are, and to your point, President Moffitt, I think there are real trade-offs in extending this goal-setting process, and I think it might be worth it. Because I think the trade-off is just, we're more than halfway through the school year. And the longer we take to get it, the harder we make it on the superintendent. And so I'm open, but I just see pros and cons.
Thank you. Any other board member, Craig?
So I think I have 3 thoughts real quick, and I'll do them real quick because I think we've been on this topic for a very long time, and I think we probably need to move on to a lot of the folks who've come here to speak. But one is, I think we could do something simplistic, as in each of the goals, we would do the same type of evaluation as to whether or not we think they've met it or not. Very simplistic. The superintendent gets to present whether or not she believes she's met those student outcome goals to us. And for Lisa's first year, it's kind of that 60% is just, did she meet, yes or no? Like, do you feel she's met these things? Whether or not those are the right numbers or nothing, I think we can probably still save off till the next board meeting to fully dive that part in. I don't think we need to have as complicated of a system on this first year, given also that we are really evaluating a different thing that we'd be evaluating in a normal year. Because we didn't give her goals. We didn't go over these goals in October. We didn't really set these precedents in October as we expected to do in the normal course of order, right? So from that part, I think we can still stick with the same formula that's in the policy at a next board meeting and give a more base level version of doing the evaluation. Where I would also say is true to this is that whatever we decide to do in this, and whatever we work with you to put together as a plan for this, at the end of the day, student achievement has to be a part of it. It has to be why we're here. And I think that's part of the why the superintendent relied upon the things that we had already set as goals. So, and I recognize, Ben, to your point, or Melindy, to your point, maybe we've progressed past what we thought we would be able to do when we initially set these goals. But I don't necessarily want to hold her to a new set of goals just because of that. And I think that to me means that needs to maybe be fleshed out in our conversation at the next board meeting, so that we really find out what those things mean. Because I do think we need to hold a high standard. I just don't know if holding the high standard mid-year has the same bringing effect as holding the high standard from the beginning of the year. My last thought to all of this is to say, part of this is really about what do we set as expectations for where our students and how the district operates. And to your point, something like transportation may be a thing that we sit down and look at those state standards and say, have you managed transportation well? Have you communicated with our partners well? To your point, President Moffitt, about handling the budget, that might be something we look at in those state standards and say, this is an example of how you've lived up to the expectations of the state or exceeded the expectations of what the state standard would be on how to deal with something like the budget or working with partners on the budget. I am very much opposed to kind of putting individualized things like that, though, as a marker, because each year we'll have something that we would say is a marker that we want to give extra credit for, and just do it through our normal process. In the same way we would say to a student who performed and did an excellent job and managed to give that extra amount of information, we unless we give it up front so that everybody can achieve it, so we know what that is, we're always going to find ways and reasons to give extra credit. And I think if the superintendent's doing a great job and things are working in the district wonderful, guess what? Everybody's going to give her extra credit for it. We don't need to necessarily, but what we evaluate is different. So I would love to make sure that we just keep a standard so that it's very clear to the superintendent up front what she's doing, that it's a standard that is based upon the goals that we set, which I appreciate taking the time to do, and that if we then need to go beyond that for future years, that we start to do that as a thing that we begin that conversation earlier. Because again, we're doing the same thing that we raised concerns about when we brought in the previous superintendent, which is that we didn't really create a measurable way to determine her growth until we were midway into a school year. And that meant that it was hard for us to sit down and say, this is what your plan is. So appreciate again for you bringing the effort to us. And I think if we can do it at the next board meeting to kind of finalize it, I think that's a fair place to do it as well.
Any other board discussion around this?
I'm not advocating or pushing. I just want to be clear on what's being decided tonight and what's next.
All right. So we've had the discussion. I do agree that we need to do this sooner than later. However, to Board Member Craig's point, we could finish this discussion at the next board meeting, which actually is our work session. If you'd like to discuss it on Saturday, we can carve out a little bit of time then. But I do think that we need to, are we going to accept the goals that the superintendent has suggested for us? That's the first step to me. Are you offered that maybe those aren't the right goals? Do you want her to go back and provide us with more updated goals relevant, or are you fine with these goals that she submitted?
I mean, I would vote no on the idea that our third grade reading only needs to go up 4 points in 3 years. Like, I think we can go faster than that. I'm one person. I may get outvoted on that. I do not want to create a ton of extra time and extra work. I would rather get clarity on the goals tonight and then leave for a future, what's the scoring method? But I'm just one person.
So let's do this. Is there any opposition to going through the goals so that she can leave with something definitive? Is there any opposition to the goals? We've heard former Board Member Lindy talk about his opposition to Goal 1. Are you proposing another number? Is there any other opposition to Goal 1? Would you like to go through the goals, or would you like to just have her go back? Vice President Bowles.
The superintendent has submitted these goals, and I would rather we accept them as a package or not, but not try to do anything tonight about the scoring. But I do think we have to have some sort of consensus or agreement as to whether these are the goals. If they aren't, then we do need to send her back to the drawing board. But so if that requires, I hate this single voting thing. Why I would motion that we would vote on these with the caveat that there is some concern about, and then leave it at that. And if somebody has concern about something, that gives her guidance to go back and fix a particular thing. But I think that this is a package, not an individual thing.
So there's a motion. Well, there's a motion on the floor. You're submitting a motion to accept the goals as written.
As written with any concerns about any particular part of the goals being communicated to the superintendent right now.
Is there a second
So,
for?
I just wanted to add some commentary before we second it on the motion. But just being presented with this today, I do want us to have some type of idea about where we are with the goals. I'm okay with us tabling the scoring process, but I would like to really second and enforce wanting to see more of an exponential growth as it pertains to our student data. And so that's why I posed the question around just the rationale. How do we determine this? And maybe, I don't know if there's even discussion on how, like, what's the expectation in terms of reaching certain benchmarks or targets if we go back and discuss the goals? Because I do think that as a district, unfortunately, and it's not anything, I think, I don't think this is something that you could be accountable for, but I do want us to make sure that we are really enforcing and holding ourselves accountable as a district to ensure greater success for our students academically. And so just looking at the data, it just is moving at a very slow pace. And so that's why I also asked about the trend that you notice and if there is anything that we could do to maybe change the target of the overall expectation of the goal. But I also want to be reasonable, right, with what that measure could be.
I think that's part of what I'm saying, is that to accept the package of these items, maybe that's the better way to say it, because once you say goals, then the scoring kind of inherently goes part of the items. She has suggested these items as goals, but the scoring, we should collaboratively with the superintendent work on the scoring at a little bit later date and then pass that. But I'm more than willing in that motion to accept this package as the items that she's proposing, and then we can collaboratively work on the scoring and the goal setting, which I think could be higher on some of these.
So is there a second for the motion to accept the package and make adjustments at the next meeting?
Second.
Okay. So we need a vote. Discussion? Mr. Crossett?
I appreciate what Ben is saying, that maybe the goals need to be looked at, but I think that that's a much bigger project. It takes a lot more time and thinking. And I like the idea that we've got, if we achieve our 2027 goals earlier, or 2025 goals, we exceed them, good for us. But then let's set some new goals for next year. But I think this is what our targets were set a while back. Let's see if we can get there and then do a reboot on that for next year. That's why I like this motion. I think that's a good way to go. And we got a half a year, it's not a full year. And then we can get some, stretch those goals out in the future.
So can we take a vote on the motion? Excuse me, that's on the floor.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Crossett?
This is the vote.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Ms. Mapp?
Just making sure that I'm clear, we are accepting the goals, but not the target measures.
We are accepting the package and we can adjust the items and we can make. No, she said that her motion, you want to explain it one more time?
The word goal indicated that we were accepting the scoring, not the scoring, but the targets. I'm saying is I'm accepting the items as a package, and that collaboratively we will work on the scoring and possibly reset the goals, the targets.
Say that last piece one more time about the targets, I'm sorry.
That we are accepting the items that she has pointed to, which I think are good, and that we do that tonight, and then we at a later date collaboratively work on both the targets and then the scoring.
Okay, I can accept that. Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice President Bolton?
Yes.
President Moffett?
Yes. Okay, so we will look at the timeline for Saturday, and maybe we can devote a little bit of time with that. We got a busy Saturday.
It's a sleepover, folks.
It
on
seems like
Saturday.
it. Because I do agree with Board Member Lindy that we do need to address this sooner than later. And we will have it for the public to be able to see these as well. And Superintendent Murphy, perhaps you can provide us with some of what the numbers are now that Board Member Lindy looked up what the numbers are currently, and then we can have that data moving forward. Okay,
I do have one other question.
yes, ma'am.
I would like for Board Member Lindy to maybe expound on this. Does this change anything as it pertains to the current standing superintendent evaluation policy that we have? What we just agreed upon? Or
That's a good question. I think we're in an unusual year because we have somebody starting in the middle of the year. And I do really agree with what Board Member Craig said earlier, which is I believe in not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and figuring out these things as quickly as we can figure them out well feels good and appropriate and a step in the right direction. So I think, let's do it quickly, but I think we're moving in a good direction.
Perfect, thank you.
And I'm going to keep advocating that we raise the bar higher.
And to that end, I do think that the evaluation policy needs a little bit of tweaking in that there is no quantitative measurement for the other things that come into place for the superintendent. Surveys completed by other stakeholders, surveys completed by board members, there is no measurement there. So maybe we need to look at adding that. And I don't know if that was purposeful or not.
It was on purpose, and
Okay.
it was left open so that boards could do what they want to do. So if there's something that people, when we do this in the process in the fall, if there's something people want to put on there, there's room for that. It was left open on purpose.
But how is that measured?
The board decides in collaboration with the superintendent. Each year, the board has a chance to figure that out together.
So, one more question. If the total is 60% for the first part, 30% for state standards, and 10% for the check-ins, where is the measurement? How is that
Yeah,
measured?
I would think about it a little bit differently. So 60% is measurable performance objectives. The board decides what those measurable performance objectives are. So every year, the board could include something in there that they want to be a part of the superintendent's evaluation. They just have to be clear on how they're going to measure what success looks like. There's also, it doesn't say 30% for a survey. It says 60% and 10%, and then it leaves the rest open. I can talk about this forever. I can tell from
Okay.
people's looks that I'm running through any goodwill that I had left with anybody on the stage. And so I'm happy to talk about this, but only if it's something people want to talk about.
Well, we definitely will come back and visit it, but we have a place for you to start, Superintendent Murphy, right now. So moving on through the agenda, I believe next up under old business, Superintendent Murphy, you're going to provide us an update to the Xavier Montessori Lab.
I am very happy to provide an update on the Montessori Lab School. So we do have a meeting scheduled with the group on Friday, this coming Friday afternoon. In addition to that, in the morning, we are doing another visit. Mr. Burkhardt, Assistant Superintendent Klein, and I are going to their site to see how they operate. We also have HR Director in Delatio looking at their current staffing. We have shared their budget, or at least as much of the budget as we could get, with the treasurer, just for her review and her awareness. At this point, things are moving forward.
Board members, do you have any questions, concerns, or need for clarification? Board Member Craig.
I will try again to be quick because I know folks are still waiting to come and talk. So my two concerns, and one lies around, potential costs. I actually think it's a great thing that we would be bringing something in like this, but I would like to have an idea of also what potential revenue stream looks like. And because for me, if we're talking about doing it and then we're talking about a future revenue of a sizable amount, that's great. If we're talking about a future revenue of a couple $1,000s, cost benefit analysis might say that it may not be as worth it to us. But if it's something that we can train our own staff on, which has a certain amount of benefit, I think it would be better served to kind of be able to do that comparison. The second point is still, my general concern is that we are building a lot of Montessori seats in elementary schools that we do not have high school seats for. And we're actually expanding the number on the side of the city that we do not have an expansion of seats for. And while I'm not here today to say we should go buy a building and put anything tomorrow, I do think we need to be cognizant of the fact that that is a valid concern. And as we think about future years with things like the lottery and other things or as we're calling it now, enrollment, we really do need to be just cognizant that some of that is not going to look and feel the exact same way if we're just constantly expanding an area which we know that there's not seats in high school for them to go to. So those are my two thoughts, quick.
Thank you. Any other, Vice President Bolton?
I appreciate the update. I am particularly thrilled that another entity wants to perhaps join our network of our Montessori system and join CPS, and that you're making the arrangements that could facilitate that. I think Member Craig is right that we don't currently have the high school seats to accommodate the growth that we are trying to achieve in elementary, but we do have a plan that has been presented for a number of years, which is to have a third high school, a Montessori high school, preferably in the central corridor. We do have a facility available that would be perhaps part of that phase 3 when we're talking about an addition at Walnut as well as a West Side high school. So I'm thrilled with this, but the biggest thing for me on this is that I've sat here so many years, and what we've only occasionally been able to do is get the training and the certification and licensing for our many Montessori teachers or wannabe Montessori teachers. That this opportunity, having this lab school, allows us in-house, literally, to get that kind of accreditation and for our professionals, and also to continue to be seen nationally as the leader in Montessori, public school Montessori. So I'm excited, but to Member Craig's point, we need to be anticipating that we're making seats, and these kids get taller, and we have to have seats a little bit later in their life for them. But thank you for the update.
Any other board member questions? Okay. Board Member Craig, would you provide us an update around the treasurer search?
So the treasurer's search closed as of Friday, I believe it was. So if you still want to apply, it's kind of a little late, but we have applicants at the next stage. For what we'll be doing is to do our first round interviews of the applicants. And so that's something that the board will take a look at. I will say we received, I can say we actually received results or for applications from across the country because, again, the treasurer's position is such a highly desired position. But what our goal is going to be is to have a selection made and a process that establishes a transition time going forward to ensure that we have enough of a onboarding time for whoever is selected to truly learn the work and be able to work with our current treasurer as she makes that faithful journey to her farm in Indiana to relax and have fun while the rest of us continue to keep toiling away here. Well-earned this time, I should say. But that is kind of where we are now, as we have our next stage in the process is do our first round interviews.
Do board members have any questions? Moving along. Our final old business topic is around the Healthy Neighborhoods joint meeting with the City of Cincinnati. We do have that meeting coming up. It will be either February 18th or February 25th. I need board members to check your calendars. The city has given us 2 dates. And I know I've heard from at least one board member that normally comes that they're not able to come. So if you could confirm with our board staff that either the 18th or the 25th are the dates that we need. And to the public, that it will be here at the Board of Ed. We're hosting it this time, and it is typically the Health and Safety Committee for the Healthy Neighborhoods Committee for the city, and we will have city council members here in addition to board members. So submit your topics and submit your calendar availability. Any questions? All right. We are moving along. Do board members have any acknowledgements or announcements? Board Member Craig.
I'll throw a acknowledgement out there, even though I was unfortunately not able to attend this weekend. But I heard that there were a wonderful showing from our CPS students at the high school ethics competition, I think high school ethics bowl competition. And so one of the things that I will say is I talked to a number of folks who were judges and were moderators and stuff for the event over the weekend. It was a 2-day event. And several of our schools were the schools that they highlighted as the ones that they sat through and watched and were really impressed by, and listening to the topics and seeing how challenging some of these topics were for our students to be able to discuss these topics with clarity and with a level of understanding about the subject matter was what impressed them the most. And a couple of folks felt like they weren't prepared to have discussions themselves, so it was really cool to see. So I just want to congratulate all the teams, but also all of the teachers and staff who worked with them as coaches. And I really want to highlight this because they made a dedication to doing that. So those are folks who actually went outside of their normal schedule of time to get trained on how to work on these high school ethics issues and really put the time and effort in to coach with these students and work with these students to do a great job. So very proud of the students, but also very proud of their coaches, because that was the other thing I heard, is that all of the coaches seemed really impressive and really on top of it and worked really hard.
Board members, any other, Board Member Weinberg.
Yes, so I wanted to give a little update the last meeting, but I will share. I got the opportunity to go to the Martin Luther King Coalition 50th anniversary, and we had our lovely school of Hayes Porter Elementary. They participated with some additional choirs, and they did a great job. They were on stage, and they were singing, and I took a picture, and I wasn't able to give it to Mr. Wilson, but maybe I'll share it out next week. But I just wanted to give them a round of applause for doing such a great job representing CPS.
Any other board announcements or acknowledgements? I will say that I had an opportunity to attend the SCPA Arts Gala. It's always a beautiful event. This particular year, they had students who designed costumes, and they were some of the most beautiful costumes ever. And so if you are looking for designers, we've got some in-house, because they were awesome. They were awesome. So thank you for the invite. Superintendent Murphy, please present any announcements and retirements that you may have.
Absolutely. There are a few retirees, certificated personnel, Lily Cohen, who is a teacher at the Promise Center. And then we congratulate Julie Jinks, who is a teacher at Woodward Career Technical High School. And then we have one non-certificate, Sue Montgomery, a teacher with auxiliary services. Congratulations. And then civil service employees, Vika Bell is a paraprofessional at Mount Airy School, and Jacqueline Cunningham is a paraprofessional at Robert A. Taft Information Technology High School. There's one more, Mr. Ralph Jones, a security assistant 2 at Robert A. Taft Information Technology High School. Congratulations. And we do have a couple of kudos. Well, one, the president has already shared, but another I want to talk to you about is our crossing guards. I do want to give kudos to Shauna McDowell, who is in our transportation department and is our crossing guard liaison. She did host a crossing guard orientation, and we have more and more and more crossing guards coming on board with Cincinnati Public Schools, and looking forward to even more for the upcoming school year. Congratulations to her for doing that. And then, as the president mentioned, SCPA and their Arts Gala.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to Vice President Bolton for the hearing of the public, we do have one board member that had an acknowledgement or an announcement. Board Member Mack.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to congratulate Taft High School for their amazing and historic football season, and we had the opportunity to go down to City Hall where they were recognized. And so I just wanted to make sure that we congratulate them, not only for being athletes, but student athletes with exceptional GPAs with a total, was it 3.1? 3.1. And so President Moffitt was there, Superintendent Murphy, Deputy Superintendent Smith, and a whole host of supporters. So I just wanted to acknowledge them and congratulate them.
One more.
Okay, sorry, Treasurer Wagner.
That's okay, just taking my, waiting for my turn. I just wanted to celebrate the release of the audit that you heard about tonight, and congratulate the Treasurer's Department and particularly Kevin Ashley in his hard work and being the liaison. But we did get another clean audit for our financial reporting with no comments or recommendations. So, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Vice President, thank you all. Madam Vice President, the chair is yours. Please conduct the hearing of the public.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, Rob, do we have anyone online to testify tonight?
Yes, we have one online speaker, and we'll need Jillian Whittaker to accept that invite, or she will miss her opportunity. Please accept that invite.
Okay, as she accepts that, we're going to start with the folks that are here and have been so patient and waiting. Melanie Wizzle, if you'll come down and sit in these chairs that are here on the lower level, and we'll call a few more names. Kelly Roberts, Kirsten Meadows, Taylor Brown, perhaps, with an E, Adelaide Kraus. If you all will come down and take a place and get in that order, and as soon as we hear from the online person, then we'll start with you all. Rob, put her on. Oh, I have to read this, don't I? See, I got the script and I still didn't do it right. We are now at the item of our agenda for hearing the public. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and will address all comments to the presiding officer. If you're online, once a request to speak has been granted, you'll be invited to enter. You should click on the camera icon to go to interactive. Provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you'd like a response to any of the questions you may have. This request is consistent with board protocol, and we appreciate your help. In the unusual event that someone is not willing to follow this protocol, we reserve the right to end that person's time. Again, each person will have 2 minutes to speak. When the timer goes off, your time is up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel matters. And after speaking, if you're online, you'll briefly see a welcome screen again as you transition back to live streaming the meeting. Finally, we ask that your public commentary be respectful of all listeners. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from all of the folks that are here tonight and our guests online.
Thank you. Jillian Whittaker, you can go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak tonight. I had a whole document written out that I was going to read regarding the current policies we have in place for our undocumented students, and we received some feedback from the district today that kind of outlines district policy and procedures to undertake in the event that immigration officials visit our school. And so I think a lot of us were looking for some guidance. And so my plan was to come on here and plead with you to make that clear to us. And so I just really now at this point wanted to say thank you for meeting and discussing with each other and providing some guidance to the schools. And I hope that the guidelines also go out to the community members and the parents in some shape or form. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am here because I am concerned about the plans to combine several schools throughout the district. Some of these schools have autism units and other disability classrooms. I want to share my family's experience when it comes to relocating autism units in particular. My son had spent the 5 previous school years at Riverview East Academy in an autism unit. Unfortunately, we are still feeling the fallout from abruptly moving these autism units, and I don't want any other families to have the same experience that we have. My son did very well when he was at Riverview East, and the school itself had a wonderful layout for these units. They had sensory spaces, restrooms actually in the classrooms, and a fenced playground that had pictures that the nonverbal children could use to communicate. Not all of the schools that currently have autism units have these features. And all the autism units were a community, and they didn't have an opportunity to say goodbye to each other. There's so much more to moving these classrooms and students than just finding available space. Both the staff and students need adequate time to prepare. The students in these classes are there for extra support, and they thrive on routine and consistency. Abruptly moving the autism units meant that there wasn't time to work on making these transitions. And unfortunately, my son is in his 3rd school for 2024, and they are looking at yet another placement for him. This has caused his anxiety to rise, and it has been very stressful for the entire family as well. He deserves better. It's been an awful situation for him.
Thank you very much for sharing. Kelly Roberts? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Roberts. My children, they go to Parker Woods Montessori. I have a 6th grader daughter, and I was just told that I have just one choice of the Montessori high schools. I am concerned. I have anxiety. I am a family of a homeless family. It is very hard. My son, he had recently graduated from Clark Montessori. That was a very good school for him. My daughter, I'm told she has to go to Gamble Montessori. I'm told there's 2 Montessori high schools, and I don't think there should be a choice. I mean, I don't think it should be just one choice. I feel that we don't have a stable home. We have been going through challenges for 2 years, homeless. This is very hard. I am trying my best with the 2 minutes, but I do ask that if my daughter can please go to Clark Montessori, because I have a lot of safety concerns with Gamble Montessori. It is a low-budget school. Clark Montessori is a totally different school, much safer. One of the staff members in Parker Woods Montessori, nephews just been hit by a car in Gamble Montessori High School. There's a lot of traffic accidents in that area. There's a lot of safety concerns with that school. One of my other children went to that school. All my kids went to Montessori schools. So I do not feel comfortable with putting my child in a school that is not a Montessori. I would like my child to go to Clark Montessori. And once again, that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much for sharing. Appreciate it. Kirsten Meadows, and as Kirsten's getting ready to speak, if Rachel Van Holly would come down, and also Aaron M.
I don't think Kirsten intended to sign up to speak. I think they just wanted to ask their question on the paper.
Okay. Both of those, or just Aaron?
Just Kirsten.
Just Kirsten, okay, great.
I don't think they wanted to speak.
All right, then we'll go to Taylor and Adelaide.
Hi. Thank you for giving people an opportunity to speak at these. We were just talking about how we want to continue to show up so that we're a little bit more a part of this. So hopefully you'll see our faces a little bit more. I too am here to address the topic of immigration and the possibility of immigration officers and ICE enforcement coming into our schools. They're already setting a precedent across the country. And I think it's really necessary for the administration down to have very set policies and not have it be up to whoever's opening the door to these people in the individual schools and individual programs. Some of the precedents that are being set are one elementary school in Chicago, ICE enforcement officers attempted to remove children from their school, and the principal was informed by their district and was very luckily able to shut that down. Another precedent being set is very different. In Texas, teachers actually called ICE enforcement and said, I have many students who don't even speak English. I want you to raid my school. So there are two ways that we could go, and I would love to be able to look at CPS and see that we are on the right side of ensuring our student safety. And as a parent, my child attends Sailor Park Elementary School. He's in kindergarten. He loves school more than anything. And I imagine how that would go if he saw one of his students, one of his friends being pulled out of a classroom by armed officers and put in a detention center. And that's the reality of what this is. And I know that it's easy to say that this is something political, that we don't really want to dip our toes in because it seems political, but it's not. It's the safety of our students. As a mother, when I drop my child off, the obligation of their health and safety is now rests on that principal, on that teacher, on, I'm going to take a minute longer because there was a lot of extra time taken before.
No, I don't think you can do that. So we appreciate your
I'll finish my
comment.
sentence, though, because when I drop my child off, his life and safety is in the hands of those teachers and those principals and that administration at that school. And this should not be stripped away just on the whim of somebody not wanting to say no because they're fearful. So I'm just asking the board to make it very clear what the rule is
Thank you very
across
much.
across Cincinnati Public School.
Thank you so much. Adelaide?
Hello, I'm Adelaide Cruz. I am a science teacher at Aiken New Tech High School, and I teach the most determined, the most resilient, the most good-spirited and dedicated students are multilingual learners. And these students have fought through tremendous evil for the privilege to study here at Cincinnati Public Schools. I've had students share with me that they remember playing in the backyard in the Democratic Republic of the Congo while rebel militia's bullets were flying over their heads. I've had students share with me that they were separated from their family in the desert of Syria. I've had students share with me that they walked all the way from Venezuela to the US border because they trusted us here in Cincinnati that we could teach them how to have a better life. And so, on behalf of those students, I have homework for the board and for the administration. One, we need very clear policies, and it sounds like they've been shared with principals, and I hope soon that they will be shared with us, the teachers, with the office staff, with the substitutes, with the community of what happens when, not if, when enforcement comes to our doors. Two, I need us to have a plan with our school partners when our kids come home to an empty house because their parents' job or store or even the bus stop was raided. And three, I need to know what is going to happen to the students who do not feel safe to come to school to learn anymore. How can we serve them remotely? How can we make up for those learning losses? Because right now, I have 50% attendance in my classrooms, and the students who are there are honestly too scared to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel?
Good evening. My name is Rachel Von Holly, and I am an English teacher to English learners, also known as MLLs or multilingual language learners. I'm here to speak on behalf of these students, families, and teachers. First, I'd like to say how lucky Cincinnati Public Schools is to have such a unique, diverse, beautiful population of students, specifically talking about our multilingual learners. My students are the best part of my day. However, I have serious concerns, worries, and fears. Since the current president was inaugurated, about 50% of my students have stopped attending on a daily basis. Families and parents are writing me saying they don't want to send their children to school. This is my 9th year in the district, teaching in the district, and for the first time I feel I have no tools. Families are scared and I feel helpless. They look to us, not you, for guidance. They look to us, not you, for help. And we cannot do our job if you don't do yours. I am disappointed that our district has not made an official statement on this matter. There are no policies in place despite the negative and dangerous rhetoric spread about immigrants for the last 2 years by the current administration. We saw this coming. There is no excuse for silence. But we're here now, and we have to face reality. We are going to lose our multi-language learners. We are going to lose their trust in everything they add to our community and schools. We need leadership from the district and board, not just the OSLA office. So asking for 3 things: public support and acknowledgement, board policies and training on said policies, and a plan to address the learning loss faced by our students who fear attending school at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Aaron, and then we'll have Sarah Madrigal and Kendra Adamson. Welcome. Go ahead. You can start.
Cool, 18 seconds it took for you to get discomfortable with the feeling of me standing here in silence. I'd like you to imagine the discomfort that immigrant families have felt as they endure continued silence by CPS in regards to the dignity as students and members of this community. The best time to make a statement, an official position, has long passed. The second best time is now.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hello. I'm going to start by saying that I am really disappointed. I'm disappointed in this board. The last time I stood in front of you, I was looked at and I was told that I was seen. And I don't know what being seen means to all of you, but your silence doesn't feel like being seen. When I talk to my students, they're not feeling seen. And I don't just mean seen in terms of how CPS is going to respond to the potential ICE raids. I mean seen like when I said that we need interpreters to be present so that our families have a voice here. I mean seen like that, because I said it and you guys were like, oh, that's a really great idea. We do want their voices. Have there been interpreters at these meetings? I don't think any arrangements have been made so their voices are heard. So I'm done talking for them. I want to talk with them. And more than that, I talk with them every day. I want y'all to talk with them because we talk about them all the time and we talk around them and we talk about things that affect their lives and we never actually ask them. Have any of us asked them what they're feeling? How many of y'all have actually asked a single immigrant how they're feeling in our schools right now and gotten a response from any of them? Because what I'm telling you, as I speak to them on a daily basis, is they feel invisible. And that's what our government's asking of them. And that's what they're being forced to do. And I was hopeful that CPS could be a little bit different in providing a place where they could feel seen and supported. So when you say that you see me as a representation of our Latin American community and our immigrant community, I want for you to recognize what that means as it stands currently. I would love for there to be action. And when President Trump says immigrants are poisoning the blood of this community, silence from the board. When he was currently, and when he said immigrants are criminals, silence. He He took his time over the course of 2 years to misalign the immigrant community, and no one from the board ever thought to themselves, let's make a statement of support, recognizing their contributions, recognizing their value, recognizing the fact that we want them here, because they don't feel wanted, and that is from somebody who speaks to them every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kendra.
Hi, my name is Kendra Adamson, and I also teach at Aiken New Tech High School. I have the privilege of teaching 7th, 8th, and 9th grade English language learners in my language arts classroom, and working with English language learners at CPS is my dream job. I love it. I love my students, I love their families, and I'm here today to voice my concern because those kids that I love, our kids, their families and their communities, they are struggling. This past week, with a rise in harmful anti-immigrant policies and rhetoric from President Trump, as well as frightening headlines about ICE raids and the potential of those raids happening at schools, churches, and hospitals, I have seen a sharp decline in the attendance from my students who are usually so eager to learn. In multiple classes, I am missing half of my students, many of whom who have said specifically that they're scared to come to school because of the potential of those raids. Our students are currently living in fear that they will be deported. Undocumented students or students with undocumented loved ones, yes, but now our students who are here with proper documentation or the path to having proper documentation are worried that a sudden change in laws that are possible with this change in leadership, they might lose their home. They might be separated from the people that they love. The silence from the school board and the lack of an official statement from CPS addressing the pain and that fear that our immigrant students face right now tells them very clearly that they are alone. CPS's motto this year is Here for Kids. So my question to the board is here for which kids? What guidance and communication is the board providing to its teachers to let them know how to support our immigrant students right now? What leadership are you demonstrating to make it undeniably clear that immigrant students are wanted here, are welcome here, are safe and valued and protected here? Without a clear statement of solidarity from the board for our immigrant students, we face the potential reality of losing their trust in us as educators, their attendance in our school, and ultimately their presence in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that that concludes all those that signed up. Thank you all very much. Madam President, back to you.
Okay. Superintendent Murphy, please present your policy for discussion.
Yes, ma'am, about our severe weather procedure. So what we are showing on the next slide, Rob, is the statement that we have made publicly about what we do when we have a weather emergency. And of course, recently we have had a few of those, either because of the snow or because of the very cold, extremely cold temperatures. And then we place a link here that takes this person directly to our website to get more detailed information about those procedures. And we just remind the public that there are a lot of things that go into making a decision, a good decision, the best decision about whether we are going to be open or closed due to inclement weather happening. We did just recently convene all of the union leaders to have a conversation around what our practices mean for them, because there was a little bit of a lack of clarity in some areas that we've been dealing with over the years. And so in a good faith effort to bring clarity, we were trying to do that. Some of the things will have to wait until we are into our negotiations, because we have contractual obligations around them that we must meet. And so I believe they're all willing and understanding of the need to do that as well. So in addition to considering all 66, 67, 68 properties and our ability to have them ready for our staff and our students, there are a lot of things as listed on the statement that go into the decision.
Board members, do you have any questions or concerns? Board member Weinberg.
Yes, so I have a couple of questions. I guess my first question would be, is this our statement or is this our procedure?
So this is a statement, and then procedures are when you click on it's showing like a bluish purple, takes you to the procedures.
Okay, so then my second question, as a parent, and I'm just going to say, I just want us to just make sure that we're being very transparent. And as I'm looking at this severe weather procedure, yes, it lists a couple of different things or reasons of why the school would close, but is there any way possible, and I can shoot this over to you in an email, that we can just have a very transparent message, such as the Cincinnati Public School District will close school when the National Weather Service forecast has sustained a wind chill of -20 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, or there is significant snowfall impacting road safety or other severe weather conditions that pose a risk to students and staff well-being. The superintendent will make the final decision to close school after consulting with local authorities and will notify, because I don't see anything on here where it says that parents will be notified, but notify parents and staff via the district website, email, text messaging, and/or local media outlets. Is there any way to kind of just make it something that's very simple, very just to the point, so that no one's wondering, or we're getting several emails that parents are confused, they don't understand, when is school closed or when is it open? So I will shoot this over to you in your email, and I just wanted to share it with the rest of the board as well. Is there a way that we can get better messaging in terms of this particular piece?
Better messaging in terms of making sure it's in writing how we're informing our parents, absolutely, because we do all of the things that you mentioned, email, robocall, text messaging when that is available, and of course using media. The one part that you mentioned early on in your statement, I get a little cautious about a particular number or temperature. Yes.
And I totally
Yes.
understand that. I just
Yes.
think that certain families or different situations that we've encountered, one day we're closed when this is a certain degree, but then it's another day and it's really, really, really cold and we're open, and it's not being consistent. So if there's a way to put that into the message, into that statement, I'm not asking for you to just specifically say A, B, C, or D, but to give those options so that parents are understanding, or when we are closed, they understand why. And a lot of our parents, they may not know that the majority of our students are either unhoused, or they may not have heat at home, or they're not able to get a meal. And so that is one of the reasons why we do have to have our schools open. I just want to make sure that all parents, all staff members, all children, everyone, we're on the same page. And I know it's a very difficult situation and very difficult choice for you to make. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Craig.
So I want to say, I guess, 3 thoughts really quickly. First is that I think the message as to whether or not we're open or not, pretty straightforward. I mean, I got the message, everyone else gets the message in the robocalls. It is lovely to get robocalls when I don't have to be, or when we still have a board meeting, but that's neither here nor there, kind of fun stuff. But I do think bringing some more clarity to what it means when we say like it's a cold weather day or whatever, that type of deal, just for those folks who are staff, I think it's just a little bit more helpful to understand whose roles come in, whose roles don't. I think to your point, there is some discussion around that with regard to their particular role, whether or not they're represented, and in particular which group was represented. I do want to say, the second thought is just, I think we noted on here, but the real is that some of this is dictated by folks who are not us. And the reality is, if we do a terrible job of cleaning the roads in all of our neighborhoods that are especially our most vulnerable neighborhoods, they're not going to get to school, even if we open a building. And especially in our high schools, where a large percentage of our high school students depend upon either family transportation or public transportation to get there. And we don't have we have high schools where there's very few students who can literally walk to school, to their high school. And so I think that's just a reality of some of the things that we were dealing with. I know some of the complaints that came in about sidewalks and other stuff not being cleared in areas where they were catching a bus. That's not us. And so I think to a certain point, I appreciate that we limit our message to what we control and what we do. I.e., if there's some issue at a particular school, and we faced other issues with regards to equipment or particular things within a school that might have been a problem, The third thought I had on all of this, though, is the reality is that unfortunately, weather patterns are becoming more and more unpredictable. And that has a large reason why something like our facilities master plan, not to keep throwing out random things that attach onto the stuff, but that's why stuff like this is important. Because if a building is damaged by severe snow or this type of thing, these costs are so super high. And the one thing I worried about when I heard we got 14 inches of snow was there going to be a school that closed for longer than a day or two? Was there going to be a school that closed for months because a roof collapsed, because pipes burst and we could not get, I distinctly remember a school, I remember it was last year or the year before, where a pipe burst and it was not this type of thing. The amount of time it took to get, I believe it was Rothenberg, if I'm not mistaken, but to get that that building back to place was not a 1 or 2 day thing. And those students were displaced and had to then be brought back. And we commend everyone facilities who did that work. But the immediate thought to me was, well, we have such low weather, we have such low temperatures that could have been something that happened again. And so I just really want us as a board to really make an effort to get through some of the discussion around the facilities master plan to address these needs that are really existing. Because even if we open a building, if there's no warm air circulating through a building, if half the building is shut down because the snow has collapsed part of the roof, things like that have severe worries for me that we're far beyond whether or not our kids miss 3 days in a week or 4 days in a week, which I still think is important. But I think there's some bigger conversation points that we have to have around some of those extra stuff. And so I appreciate the message that was being sent out and just hope that we as board can talk more about that.
I appreciate your feedback too. I told the staff I deviated from what's necessarily on a piece of paper, because for me, that process that week, Monday, the first day that we had to deal with the storm, I think everyone understood we had to deal with the storm. On Tuesday, I instead of going my regular route to work, I went a street route because I wanted to experience what the streets were like for people, what the sidewalks were like. I saw that. But in addition to that, I did think about the 10% of our kids who are experiencing homelessness, who are unhoused, and what this means to them after 3 days. So even the ones who are in the shelters, sometimes the shelters kick them out during the day. I don't know if that happened or not, but sometimes that happens. You've heard me say, and Rebecca Beach say many times, we used to worry about kids sleeping in cars. We have many kids sleeping under bridges. And even if we're talking about one for that particular night, there's kids sleeping under bridges. I worried about that. I worried about our employees. I worried about our families, because some of our employees are hourly. Some of our parents are hourly. They have to go to work. And if there's no school, they're not able to go to work as easily. Our employees, if we don't open school, if you miss a day's pay, that might be one thing people can live with. 2 days, but by the time you get to that third day, it can really be painful. In addition to that, I think about the equipment. You heard on the news, the city said after the first snowstorm, they had X number of their plows. There are a lot of things that go into this tough decision. I don't take it lightly. I take it very seriously. And I deal with those who expect us to be in school and the same number that expect us to not be in school. So I have grandchildren in this district. I work in this district. I am genuinely making what I think is the best decision, not necessarily based on a temperature all the time, but on holistically what is happening across our city, what I can control, what I can't control, as well as specifically to this school district. So the decisions were not made to irritate, frustrate, upset anyone. They were the best decisions that I could make at that time.
Thank you, Board Member Lindy.
Thanks, President Moffitt. I just wanted to say two things. One was, I don't envy you these decisions whatsoever. On the list of things that I think would be extraordinarily difficult about being a superintendent, this is I don't want to say the top of the list because there's some other really hard stuff, but it's on the list. And they feel like just, there's going to be some group that's very upset no matter what. I also wanted to just to thank you. Other thing I want to say is how much I agree with what Mrs. Weinberg was saying a second ago, that I don't second guess your judgment on any of these things whatsoever. I do think sometimes there's an opportunity for the communication to help us out in the long run. I think you even shared this example, but the cold day language when there are days that are later colder than that, it just confuses people. And I'm wondering, is there some broader language we could use that gives you the room you need to weigh all of these things with every decision, but doesn't invite unnecessary frustration from parents?
Thank you. Any other board member can? I will just say, and I know the superintendent has heard me say this because we've talked about it. I don't envy you at all. We have had many conversations around this. I think that what people are looking for is consistency, clarity. If it's 20 degrees one day, but it's 10 degrees the next day, they want to understand what that is. I've invited the superintendent to make a little video each time to say, hey, this is what went into this decision on this day. I don't know if that's feasible, but I think that may provide the community with some clarity and some understanding. I don't know if we should put numbers to those, to this policy, but the way that this is written doesn't offer clarity, and it doesn't define consistently what it will be. So I just want to invite the administration to think about that when they are giving something to the public around days on and days off. And I don't envy you. This is a very tough decision, and I know for a fact that you put a lot of heart into making that decision, and have gotten a lot of backlash as well. But I think that we can be a little bit more consistent for our staff and a little bit more consistent for our community as well. And maybe there's something separate that goes to our staff than what goes to the public. I don't exactly know, but I do know that those are two areas that we've heard a lot of discussion around. Do any other board members have any other concerns? Vice President Bolden?
I would just add, and I think it's been touched on by the superintendent, but part of this is the internal communication because of our different employee groups and unions have different responsibilities on such a day. And so our vocabulary, I keep saying this, our vocabulary has to kind of catch up with what we're doing because we're still using old vocabulary. And that's part of the confusion. And I'm glad you've convened a group to try to figure this out. Also, we don't have, in this big place, we don't have the same options that any of the other 21 public school districts in Hamilton County have because of our dependence upon Metro. We don't have the delay opportunity that I experienced in Wyoming, actually, where superintendent get out, and if that superintendent could climb up their driveway in their car, the schools remained open. You have to have all kinds of things to do there. But I do think we need some vocabulary that could help the clarity that Member Weinberg is talking about, because we're still using old vocabulary.
Any other comments? Okay, Superintendent Murphy, please introduce your next presentation.
Happy to do so. All right, we'll go from inclement weather to summer school. Our curriculum director, Ms. Emily Campbell, and our director of human resources, Ms. Julia Indalacia. Thank you.
Good evening. What a great segue from winter to summer. Thank you for giving us time to share our proposal for our summer school optioning this June 2nd through June 27th. Next slide, please. So we convened a team of principals, counselors, teachers, a variety of stakeholders several weeks ago to talk through what we need to offer in addition to the school year. And what we want to do is increase equitable access for our K-8 students, our incoming K-8 students, and our high school 9 through 12 students who are in need of recovering core credit for graduation. So we believe these extra 19 days can be measured by attendance in the K-8 space, as well as increased student readiness as measured by our fall-to-fall ELA and math benchmarks. And then in high school, we want to increase credits for graduation, as well as programs like work, volunteer, and clubs. And then we would also like to have a climate survey for families, students, and staff. Next slide, please.
So in terms of logistics, it makes sense to start the day early with teacher prep. Our teachers, we've got feedback from them that said that they would rather start early than to stay later to do the prep. And so the school day across the district would be 8 a.m. And then end at 1:15, allowing them to spread their prep out between the beginning and the end. And in that time, for elementary, they would have a math block, an ELA block, and an enrichment block. This is different than in the past. In the past, they had 3 blocks, and and teachers had some choices about when they're going to teach. And we really, after a lot of discussion with all the interested parties, it made sense to have a pretty static schedule across the district. At high school, they would have credit recovery blocks aligned to that which they're missing. So those credits that they're missing, they would have a block for that. And then also at high school, some opportunities to earn some credentials or seals, do some continuous work on that, as well as Emily talked about, volunteer work, perhaps even work opportunities we're hoping to get with our partners and our local communities to maybe help with that in terms of helping our kids to have something to do all day. We know that filling their time with productive work is a good thing, especially if it's leading towards some income for them or some volunteer hours. And so there's the schedule for that, for the day. Rob? And our timeline. So we are working now in the winter part. So we've begun our recurring work team that meets every other week. And that team is, Emily talked about our stakeholder group that started early, and now we're a team that is across the district in terms of all the departments. So transportation and facilities and student dining services, curriculum, human resources, all the departments are getting together that touch summer school, which is literally all the departments, right? It's central office, including the treasurer's office, et cetera. So at this point, we are at a point where we are ready to start recruiting students, which will happen around mid-February. And that will be based on having counselors look at what does the matriculation towards graduation look like, as well as what did the winter benchmarks look like for our students in elementary school. So really looking at that data to see who in priority needs to be included in the summer school. This spring, then, we will provide PD for the staff, and registration will happen at the sites. Finalize the rosters, of course schedules, et cetera. And then in June, we'll implement high-quality instruction, make sure that we give progress updates, and take advantage of every last minute that we have those students in school, just to make sure that this time is effective and engaging. So that is our timeline, and that's where we are now, is wanted to bring that update to you so that you had a chance to look at where we're heading for summer school and see if you had any feedback for us or questions.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions? Board Member Weinberg.
Hi. I'll be quick with my questions. So based off of the information that you all provided, I am curious of a couple things. So we've done summer school in the past, and as we're looking forward to redoing it and hopefully doing it with some innovation and something different, I did not see a cost at all listed here. So my question would be the cost for transportation, the cost for materials, the cost for staff, et cetera. And then I know there was a huge concern with attendance. So if you're trying to have summer school for 19 days, I know in the past, there was, I guess, provided feedback from teachers or just staff members that stated that the children weren't showing up. How are we going to really get the kids to show up? And then three, excuse me, I know that your goal is to really get the kids in need. How many children so far, based off of our data that we know of, could you maybe give a roundabout of a number of what we're thinking we would like to see for the numbers to make summer school successful? So sorry if that was a lot, but when I
That's
saw
okay.
this, I thought
So
about it.
budget, attendance, how do we get attendance, and then what are the approximate number of students that we're addressing? In terms of budget, we've worked with the Treasurer's Office, and we have $2.5 million that is some carryover title money that can be used for the staff, materials, and transportation. There is also a small bucket of money in a Title 11 that is formerly is summer school money that was carried over from back in the days when we used to charge tuition for summer school. And so those are allocated by building, so you can only use those for the building that they came from. And so we're looking at that, especially for our non-title schools, and thinking about how we could fund non-titles. And so that's where our budget is right now. That's what we're looking at. With that,
Sorry to interrupt. So you're saying that we're going to get the budget from Title I and Title 11? What were the two?
Yes, Title I and Fund 11.
Fund 11.
Fund 11. That will yield us, the way we think about that breakdown in terms of staff, is that will get us about 260 teachers, roughly about 8 teachers per building, for a cost of about $101.5 million at 15 elementary sites and 16 high school sites. So every high school would have its own site, and we found that works best, and elementaries would pair up with neighbors. And we've also tried to be careful about choosing sites because we have the growth plan happening, and so we don't want to go to sites where there's going to be a lot of construction or there's going to be a lot of movement. And so we've worked on that. We also would allow for 1 para per site. That way we can get some help with in terms of lunch and making sure that folks are on site for that. And so that would also cost a little bit, about $100,000 for that. And then we have allocated right now about $500,000 for transportation. So that's where we are. I'll have Emily pick up on attendance.
And just to say something else about with the budget, when you come back, or I'm assuming you'll be bringing back more information regarding this, can we actually see that budget put in onto a slide?
Absolutely, yes. And it'll get more detailed, obviously, as we dig in.
Yes.
In regards to attendance, this was a conversation that we had with our original visioning committee with teachers and principals, and their comments were we have to offer something exciting during the day that makes students want to come and do that additional hard work with math and ELA, which is why we wanted to keep that enrichment block in the elementary school, and also provide work-based opportunities, volunteer opportunities, things that students can do to get their seals, as well as jobs, because that was a big reason why our high school principals were saying high school students weren't showing up. That is our goal for attendance. And then the third question you had was related to data. And I don't have the number of students right now in need of credits for 912, but approximately 18% of our students for the 3rd through 8th grade reading benchmark were 3+ grade levels below. And those are, so we want to start with our students with the most need. We want to invite them, market, make it seem as exciting as possible, and make sure that our students with the most intense need.
Thank you.
Vice President Bolden?
Yes, I'm happy to see the multiple sites, especially for the high school folks, because I think that was pretty rough to not have them at the various high schools. Also, it'd be great, I know we've done it in the past, and maybe we did it recently, but I can't recall. It'd be great to actually see at the end of this how many kids picked up how many credits. It'd be great to see if anybody that attended summer school actually had reading improvement or math improvement. Do they do better, or they are less likely to drop out, or what? It'd be really kind of great to use some of these, this cadre of kids or cohorts of kids to really see if there is this value to summer school that we hope it exists. So thank you for your presentation.
Board Member Mapp?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. As it pertains to the high school must-haves, you have listed that there's off-site opportunities such as volunteer and work opportunities. I'm interested in knowing if we have established a connection with the city. I know that at our neighborhood meeting, there was a conversation and a presentation around possible jobs available, different maybe internships. And so I'm wondering, have we solidified that connection so that our students do have access to different work and volunteer opportunities?
So we have Mr. Badgett on our design team, and I wouldn't say that we've solidified our partnership with the city, but we are actively working with our city to offer things like lifeguarding classes so that students can again get jobs. And so we also have our college and career team on the design committee to just increase our partnerships and things like that.
And then Board Member Mapp, I want to add, we were on a call today with the city, in particular about the Public Service Academy, and we're going to do a very specific push around the fire and police cadets for Cincinnati Public Schools. We also talked with them about the idea we have around a city career cafe, where City of Cincinnati employees will come and kind of mentor for a day, different groups of kids talking about their particular career in the city, how they got started, what they do on a day-to-day basis. We talked about moving forward around our partnership with the Public Service Academy, continuing this career cafe concept, but in addition to that, with the city in particular, having job shadow opportunities and group tours of kids from a variety of schools. So I believe everybody is on board with working through what that looks like. The city manager mentioned having Mr. Johnson, Jew Johnson, come and speak with us a little more intently about the summer employment that is available. Also coming up, you'll see in the weekly update this week, the deputy and Casey Fisher are working on a Grow Your Own, so employment here in Cincinnati Public Schools. In particular, I think this is targeting our seniors though, so not really about summer school, but how our seniors who might be interested in immediate employment can get started right here in our school district. So you'll hear more about that soon.
Thank you for that feedback. And then the last part of the question is talking about the credentials and the seals. Where will there be aligned conversation around what these possible job opportunities will do in terms of earning those seals, or would this be a separate discussion?
We intend to have that all-inclusive, so the college and career team are on our design team for summer school so that it is embedded within.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Craig?
So again, thank you for putting together the presentation. And again, Superintendent, I know we shared our feedback, and so I appreciate you providing responses to it. So I won't go through all of the parts of that, and then part of it has also been already answered. I think one of the things that I do want to make sure, and it's going back a little bit to Board Member Weinberg's point with regards to consistency of attendance. You know, one of the issues with summer scholars, and I get it because to a certain extent, the enrichment idea, parents commit to it initially and then kind of, but our summer trip is planned, right? Or, you know, our family reunion is that weekend, or those types of things. And it puts us on that line of having folks who are employed who don't have work to do. And that is my one worry even in doing it in that sense, because what we did notice is we had a high number of folks at the beginning of the summer who attended and a very low number in comparison in some spaces, or even at finishing that first week, right? Like that tended to be some of the issues. And so I guess my first question in that line though is there an expectation that for the K through 8 especially, that they would have show some measure or have to prove some measure of achievement from going through the summer school. Because I do think, for me, if it still remains, trying to keep people on track or trying to keep people growing, you're going to still end up with the same result, which is a number of folks who they're all gung-ho about it the first week. By week 4, it's, well, but we planned this family trip, or, you'll miss 2 days this week because we got this thing, or your cousins are in town, so go play with them this week, kind of deal, which we know families do during the summer, right? Because that's not unusual. So I guess, is there an expectation of some type of completing or meeting some level of demonstrating you've learned or demonstrating you've met the necessary results as part of that?
So our goal is to look at the students who do attend and look at their fall benchmark data. So we're trying to reduce the summer slide by increasing the 19 instructional days. The principals on our design team elevated those same concerns, especially when we were putting 7 to 8 elementary schools within a building, which required getting your child to this building that may have been much further away from what they were used to going to. So we were much more intentional about grouping clusters of 3. I think we have one situation where we have 4 schools going there and making them geographically, make sense geographically. So you would notice that Sailor Park is a standalone because Sailor Park students did not come to their site that was
nowhere near anything else.
that was identified last year. So those are 2 attempts in addition to the enrichment, making it fun. Although we know that this is really important for kids to learn to read and be able to do mathematics. Kids want to enjoy their time, and they want it to feel a bit different than the typical year.
Absolutely. I can understand that.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have done too is in thinking about the staffing, we also know that, especially at the high school, and one of the reasons we chose to have each of the high schools be their site is because the kids will be familiar with those folks. And these are kids who are in danger of not matriculating through for high school. And so having a relationship with someone from the building or someone who's familiar with the building and going to that building makes a lot of sense in terms of helping push that piece exactly, Board Member Craig, around making sure people come to summer school. That's really important. But you were going to say something else about that? No? Okay.
And again, I think my concern still remains with the K through 8 more so than the high school. I think the purpose of the high school is credit recovery, getting the credentials and seals and these type of things, which are all things that I think are essential. The K through 8 is the one where, for me, a lot more of the reason folks did not continue or did not make it all the way through has nothing to do with whether or not the building was close enough to them, right? There are these other factors that are part of that K through 8 process. Of if one kid is in or one kid is not, like those type of things. So just that's something for us to look at and monitor as to whether or not that makes the same sense in the same way. For the high school, and to Superintendent, to you, so a little bit of the credit to your way. I know we connected up with some folks within the AFL-CIO who had mentioned opportunities through a number of the different trade unions. I think this is another expectation that we could, or another opportunity to partner with them with regards to career tech in the summer opportunities, because again, it's a little bit more difficult in the school year when we're trying to do some of this stuff in the middle of the school day and trying to figure out their schedules in that way, if the whole point of it is to provide them opportunities to learn to do specific skills or trades, and especially ones that might, to I think your point that you were making at the end there of opportunities to grow within. If you have a student who's learning plumbing and as a summer credential, who then maybe they do that their junior year or their sophomore year, they're more prepared to be an apprentice to become a plumber in the district, right? Or an electrician in the district or outside the district, to be quite honest. And last time I checked, based on what they are charging me to do this work in my own place, plumbers and electricians make a good amount of money. So But that's a skill set that I think, to be quite honest, we may not have the same time and effort and ability to do all the same things in the school year that we could during a summer program. There might be a mentorship or like an internship or that type of deal. The other thought I wanted to just kind of throw out there with regards to all of this is I know we're trying to identify those students who may be, and this is to a point of the old Student Achievement Committee, we first discussed how do we do this? How do we do work with our students is to look at where they're not meeting or where they're falling behind and try and get them up to speed early. One thing, though, I do think maybe is worth discussing and looking at that is, are there opportunities some schools have a different issue, like at each school as to what might be drawing some of the students behind, right? So some schools have great career tech numbers, right? They're on top of it, but maybe math is an area that school that they're struggle with and that type of deal. And I don't know if at this point, there may not be that level of identification that we can do with individualized schools. But if we're going to be doing that within the high school, trying to keep them separate, it may need us to do some more targeted in the future. So just to think about something like that, because I think that may be also a better draw to a parent to say, my kid at this school, who they're really struggling at algebra to get through that, versus at another school where maybe it is a career tech credential they need, or it is something else that might be more beneficial, but it's not what's being offered. And so if you're going to have individual high schools, I think it may also make sense to do a little bit more of the tailoring to get your better bang for your buck from that.
So before I go around a second time, I'm going to just offer my questions and comments, and I'm sorry I'm withering here on my voice. I have about 4 questions for you. The first is the host schools are going to be the high schools, correct? All of the high schools. Did you give us which 15 elementary sites are going to be hosting summer school?
We did not give it to you in this presentation, but we can get you that Google Doc it's a draft right now, but.
Okay, so it's just kind of you're still thinking that part through. I would love to see, we've had this discussion around summer school. This is my 4th time being on the board, and the overarching opinion is not that it works. So it seems to be a lot of money, a lot of resources for the return on investment to not be as successful as we anticipate. One of the things I'd like to see that I didn't hear, that I'm sure maybe it is there, is that can we incorporate maybe a summer bridge program for the junior high students that are going to these junior highs that we know, and maybe make it a little bit more interesting and lively for them to attend, but it also serves a purpose so that they're getting to know their new school, they're getting to know their new route. They may or may not be able to meet teachers. They may or may not be able to see some people that they are going to see in the fall. But I think that we need to start, we think of it in terms of education, because that we're educators, and we have the best educators, if you ask me my opinion, and staff as well. So this is no knock to what you all are doing. But I think we also need to make it a little bit interesting for them where they are. And if we could utilize the 19 days to expose them to what maybe they are going to get, maybe level set expectations for junior high is what I'm speaking of, make it a true summer bridge program, I would feel better about that spend of $2.5 million in transportation costs, because it would feel like, I would feel as if it were filling a need that they're going to get, and they might see a value in that as well. And then perhaps we could have a parent component where parents can come and get their questions answered. They can also see some of where their students are going to be going and what that looks like, so that it's not just we're telling you in the fall, you're actually becoming immersed, and perhaps we could bring some, hey, join the PTA, LSDMC. What I'm actually asking for is more continuation of and inclusion of all of our services, so that it's not just disjointed. The actual return on investment may not be seen academically only, but it could be seen in other ways as well. And we could also measure that with data around how many parents come versus, those that feel prepared in the summer, that come in the summer, or do they feel prepared in the fall? We can tie that to data. But I think I'm really more interested in being more well-rounded with the money spent specifically for Summer Bridge, because this is an opportunity for us to do that. With regard to seals and credit, are we talking about credit recovery, which is an online program? Are we talking about teachers in the building? And seals and credentials, to me, I'd like to see something a little bit more like credentialing to earn a certificate so that they are leaving that building with something. It is not impressive to me that we just simply offer seals. What is impressive is that we are employing these students to either be credentialed to get employment, or they're right there at that step for employment. That's what needs to happen. I also think that that's going to help the students attend, because right now, if we're just offering the same thing, the return on investment to me is not worth the $2.5 million investment. With regard to paying the students, if we were to partner with the county has offered us the ability, in return for helping students get their work permits, the opportunity, they pay the salary of students. They pay for that. So perhaps we could tie in their youth employment department to have them come to school during the day and then stay at school and do some sort of work. Again, that would not be a cost to us. That's a partnership we need to explore more, so that, I don't know if we can decrease that $2.5 million, but we can definitely be a little bit more efficient with that. And my last point is around what is the capacity? We talk about where the students are coming from, but what would the capacity at your current staffing that you're proposing around 260 teachers, 31 paras, at a cost of around $1.5 million? What's the capacity of students that you can serve at that?
I can answer your question about recovering credits. We do have Edgenuity that students can do on their own, but our intent for summer school is that it is teacher-driven instruction using Edgenuity as a resource. And then, Ms. Indalecio, capacity.
I just ran very quick numbers. I'm trying to pay attention to the contract a little bit, but I'd say somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 students could be served. Depends on how we do that, though, right? So I love the idea of thinking about like the AFL-CIO and working with the county. And my son's a graduate of CPS. He's an electrician. He decided to do that after he started college, and now he's making above our teacher salary, and he's 28. And so I think, if you could introduce those skills to the kids in the summer and have them do, okay, this week we're going to have, and we've had those folks here at board meetings before, the apprenticeships, who are saying, we'd love to have some of those kids. Well, would you be willing to come for a week in the summer and do a workshop for them? And the plumbers, to your point, would you be willing to come and do this for a week and introduce them to different areas, so that, because a lot of times kids don't know how to access the trades. And blue collar is not a four-letter word, right? This is like an important piece that could be a great future for some students. So I just think about how we use, we can talk about capacity depending on how we use those teachers and how we allocate, whether it's more to high school and fewer to K-8 or that. We sort of did a rough estimate where we said if we had 260 teachers, that'd be about 8 per building. How would you use that? And it doesn't necessarily mean that's 8 per building, right? That means that's an average of 8 per building, but there might be some cases where it might make sense to have more at a high school where there's more credit recovery that needs to happen, and more of these experiences in planning and preparation for next steps. And towards that, towards credentialing, towards SEALs, towards volunteer work, and towards paid employment. And so I think we have an opportunity to kind of, with your feedback, this has been really helpful tonight, to think through next steps for how to really make all of this come to fruition.
Thank you. I think I said it rather raspily, but I just really want us to reimagine summer school, because we can do different for our kids. Board Member Mapp, you had a question?
So I just want to thank you for your commentary because you touched upon a lot of the things that I was going to speak about. Because what I do think, as you talked about it being disjointed, I don't necessarily know that our students as well as our parents have a connection to what we're striving to accomplish. And so creating conversations early as well as consistently so that we're all on one accord. And, this is really to you all as well as superintendent. I know that we have the focus of Here for Kids, but if there could be some type of campaign about what does that actually mean, right? So when we're thinking about trying to put in different interventions, how do we connect that to our goals that we're trying to accomplish with the OST? How do we connect that to our credentialing and our seals? How do we connect that to what they're doing in everyday practice so that as a whole, not just the teachers, not just the board or the superintendent understand what we're trying to have the students accomplish, but they have a clear understanding, as well as the parents have a clear understanding of what the actual goal is. And so when we hear that focus consistently throughout the district, that's something that they can recognize as a whole. We all can recognize this is what we're working on. And so if that's something that we can do, I would definitely encourage it because I think it will help to create that excitement. I think it will help to create that reimagination. I like to speak about when I was in the classroom, we had after school opportunities. So maybe if summer school isn't necessarily working, are we looking at what the after school process could be like? How many students would attend? How many parents would be interested in their students attending? Because you don't necessarily have to think about transportation. They are already there, right? So that's an opportunity we can capitalize on possibly if you all look into just information and research around that. And then also really celebrating the students, getting them excited. We would have pep rallies, right? To say this is what our focus is. And as a district, everyone was speaking the same consistent language. And I think that will help to have more alignment and more connection as to what we're trying to accomplish. Because just looking at, we want them to earn seals. We want them to, we want to target the students that need that additional support. I think there needs to be more connection in how we do that. So thank you for your point, and hopefully that's something that we could possibly explore.
Member Cross.
Just very quickly, I really like the idea of the high school and the jobs connection. And I'm just assuming, but maybe not, are you working with CPS's Business Advisory Committee? Business Advisory Council. It's all about getting high school kids jobs. So I'm happy to connect you. I'm the board liaison to that, but that's what they do. And I think they'd be really happy to plug into your program.
Thank you.
Vice President Bolden.
I appreciate everybody's ideas and stuff, but I also want to make sure we don't try to do everything and not really accomplish what we absolutely have to accomplish in summer school, which is the kids have to be able to progress. I mean, if it gets to be too many things, I don't know that we're ready to be too many things yet. I'm very excited about the career piece and the work part, and I think the enrichment, that's critical. But let's not lose sight of what we're really going to be, at the end of this, going to be demanding of y'all as to what was accomplished. Mm-hmm. And because we obviously have some issues. I think it's important. Thank you.
Board Member Craig.
To that point, I think it is also important to recognize how we're paying for this. So, I mean, there are limitations to the stuff we can do with the funds that we're paying for this with. And so I think that's important for us to recognize as a board, as you all are thinking about what to do with this and how to figure out the best ways to do it, because we can come up with a bunch of ways that are truly just purely enrichment that we can't do. And that's just the reality of how title funds are meant, right? That they're not meant to create these whole wonderful things that actually are probably necessary for students who need Title I funds, but there are to do this specific type of work. And so that would be the only caveat I would add also to Board Member Bolton's, or to Vice President Bolton's point, is that as we as a board think about all these things, recognize we're paying for this a certain kind of way. So unless we're going to find other resources or other means to do that, we do have limitations on how we can do that.
Okay, I think you all have gotten quite a bit of information. I'm going to still invite you to reimagine this. You know what the limitations are. We don't. We've given some very great feedback, I think, and some rich feedback. So for sure, thank you for all your time and your efforts. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Superintendent Murphy, please introduce your final presentation.
So we have Kathy Spellman coming along with Amanda Vargo from our performance team, and they're going to talk to us about third grade reading, in particular our fall scores.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Thank you, President Moffitt, Vice President Bolton, Superintendent Murphy, Treasurer Wagner, and board members. I am Kathy Spellman, Director of Performance and Accountability and Testing. As you remember, when I was reported out on the report card, the data lady. So I'm also pleased to introduce to you Amanda Vargo, one of our testing managers, and she's going to present tonight the third grade reading data, the fall data for you.
All right, good evening, everybody. So we are going to take a look at our fall third grade results. Go ahead. So just a couple notes about the test. I won't read the slide to you, but this is the only test we give in the fall. It is the same test design, same rigor, and same scoring system as the test that we give in the spring, even though we give this test in the fall. The results we look at are also every kid that tested, not necessarily kids who will end up being like our full year accountable kids that end up populating our report card. So the way this data is kind of most valuable, because it is a summative end of year assessment that we give in the fall, is really comparing kind of the fall to fall data so that we can look at trends. So that is provided here for you and kind of called out in red. So there is 4 years of data, trend data on this sheet. From fall to fall for fall of 21 through fall of 23, we had increases every year, which followed the state trends as well. We did see a little bit of a difference from this fall as compared to last fall. We actually remained stagnant this fall compared to last fall at the exact same percent proficient. However, I do want to point out that the state, this is the first time they had a decrease of 5 percentage points across the state, and we did not follow that trend as a district. We maintained. There were some highlights that I want to call out. So 50% of our elementary schools did show an increase in percent proficient on the fall test this fall as compared to last fall. We had 8 schools show proficiency in at least 10 percentage points from this fall compared to last fall, and those schools are Bond Hill, GDA, Frederick Douglass, John P. Parker, Kilgore, Pleasant Ridge Montessori, Roselawn, and Winton Hills. And then we had 4 schools that actually have a higher proficiency this fall than they did compared to their overall accountable student population last year on their report card. And those are Bond Hill, GDA, Hayes Porter, and Kilgore. So did want to just shout out those highlights. And then finally, there is a comprehensive list of percent proficient for all schools, and showing that same 4-year trend. The full list is linked there for your consideration. Oh, sorry, that's all I had.
I'm sorry, I was expecting you to continue. Questions, Board Member Craig?
So let me start by, again, thanking the superintendent for providing a response to my email when, again, trying to follow President Moffitt's guide for us to give feedback and information in early so we can have it fully understood. My question, I have 2 questions at least for now. 2 questions. First is really around the comparatives from last year to this year. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that is striking to me is in the full chart, when we look at the full summary, the amount of students who go from in the fall where their scores are to where the percentages are in the spring or in the final report. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of growth in most of our schools. There's a substantial amount of growth. And it reads either one of 2 ways, right? One is that fall is at what some people think of as that summer slide where folks have, kind of enjoyed their summer a little bit too much, right? Or it could be that maybe at that level before, because my understanding is we don't really have the same testing for the second grade as we do for the third grade, that there may not be that achievement quite yet as they enter third grade that they'll have at the end of third grade. And I guess maybe if you could speak a little bit to that part of it for me, because I think it is important to compare the fall to fall, but it may be more important to compare the final to final, given that they've now had the opportunity to learn the materials, even if they hadn't been introduced to it before.
100%. So I think what you're calling out is really important. So this is a summative end-of-year third grade test that we are giving in October. So there's not really like a standard that we would look at to say we expect X amount of kids to be proficient. That's really why the kind of the trend and the comparison is where we can get value in the data. The rigor of the fall test is the same as the rigor of the spring test. So if we didn't see those large jumps after a full year of instruction, I think we would have a lot of different questions, right? We don't have second grade state testing. We have benchmark assessments that we look at that show other metrics that we measure success by, that we could do comparatively, not provided here tonight.
And I appreciate that, because again, I think that's part of where, for me, it's a hard part to read what the fall numbers actually are telling me, because when you look at some of these, you have some schools where, yeah, they've grown, but your growth is 3-4 people this way leads to a substantial growth in that fall number. But if you look at where they are at the end of the fall, you have some places that are almost doubling and tripling where they started at the beginning of the year. So that's helpful to understand. I think the second question I have is, as we look at these numbers, as we look at the schools that have had growth, if we look at the schools that are seeing growth, there is also the kind of a question of what happens next year in the comparatives, because we don't have the same schools next year for third grade. And we can't, it's not necessarily an accurate comparison even to the schools that we still do, because they'll have a different group of students that will be their third grade. And so I just wondering how we're thinking about this as we go forward into next year, because of the changes that have been made for the 2025-26 school year.
That's a great question for us to consider.
Board Member Lindy.
Thank you for the great report. Are there ways we can be helpful for you?
I don't think so. I think it's important for me, for you all, and for the public to understand that the point that this is a summative end of the year test, and so that's the value in comparing the fall to fall. But I think we made that clear here tonight, and so I think that whatever we can do to help kind of community contextualize this information, I think is really important.
Board Member Crossett.
Just kind of curious, why did the state of Ohio drop so much?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, these third graders were in pre-K when the pandemic hit. We could perhaps distill, but I mean, I don't have any sort of insights, and they haven't released anything to my knowledge to explain that, so I don't know.
Vice President Weinberg. It's been late, yo. I'm
Well,
sorry.
at least they didn't call me
Vice
Melanie
President
Bates,
Bolton.
Finally. Did they change the test? I mean, in that third grade, I mean, since the state went down so far.
The blueprints that are the same, the specifications are the same, the scoring is the same, so no.
Thanks.
Board Member
What are you going to
Weinberg.
call me? I just wanted to say thank you so much for the presentation. Again, I always like looking at the numbers. I like seeing how either we're improving or what are some ways that we can get better. And I also liked how you also showcased the male versus female, and then the different, also whether it was Hispanic versus Black versus white. So thank you for that as well.
Board Member Craig.
Just one other thought came to my mind as well as I was looking at this. In some of the parts of our district where we have a larger population of students taking the test, are there resources that are being allocated, sometimes it's easier when you have like a group of 40 kids or 50 kids versus 150, but in some ways, sometimes 150 is easier to manage what we're adding out or what we're planning for that year? What are we able to do as they grow into the processes? And I think we're going to see more students per grade in some of these schools now than we had before. So I'm just also trying to think of, are there things that are being done in that first and second grade level that we can kind of champion out as ways that some of those schools are seeing substantial growth? I mean, it's not just our Montessori schools. It's not just one type of school. There are a wide variety. And so I don't know if there are things that they're doing that you've seen or we've seen in some of the testing that's had positive results towards these increases in numbers.
I think our team has really done a lot of conversations. Even last week, the deputy superintendent, assistant superintendents and I talked about where we are school by school. It took us a lot of time. And in some places where we're observing, we're still seeing a lack of access to the curriculum at the level and degree that we are expecting it. And so we are going back after instructional rounds. The deputy has added a round to some of the schools. Some schools are not where they are benchmark to benchmark for where we want them to be. And so we're taking extra measures in that way.
I appreciate that, because again, I think that goes a little bit to what Board Member Lindy was asking. In some ways, is there stuff like, are we having the right resources, or is it just, making sure the right resources get used that we can always be effective in thinking about or helping out with in any way?
So I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I do want to go to slide 5. Rob, if you could go there. We are talking about improvement in these schools, and that needs to be highlighted to me, because it breaks my heart that we're talking about such low proficiency numbers, quite frankly. I mean, we're celebrating numbers that are less than 50% proficient, if we really are honest with what we're looking at. But these schools did demonstrate some success, and I think that that warrants us to be highlighting that as well. So kudos to those students, staff, and administrators. Thank you. Are there any other questions? All righty. Do board members have any topics for board matters? Okay, a proposed consent agenda has been distributed. Treasurer Wagner, please maintain the list of any exceptions and the exception makers. Do board members, the superintendent, or the treasurer have any exception items to the consent agenda? Board Member Matt?
Yes, I do have some exceptions to the treasurer's report. Just give me 1 second to.
That's okay. You want me to have Ms. Weinberg go first?
That's fine.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes, so I do have some exceptions. We're going to go with page 9, line 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12. Page 10, line 14, page 11, line 3, and page 12, line 6.
Thank you.
Board Member Matt?
Yes, thank you. So page 8, line items 11 and 12. Page 10, line item 9. Page 11, line item 13.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay. So I need a motion, excuse me, and a second to approve the items of the consent agenda.
Second.
Excuse me, Treasurer Wagner, can you call the voting roll for the passage of the consent agenda and revisions?
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Crossan?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
I'm going to abstain on the treasurer's report, page 14, under general counsel for the superintendent's contract. Yes on the rest, please.
Thank you. Ms. Mapp?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice President Bolton?
Yes.
President Moffitt?
Yes. We have 3 topics for inquiries and updates. Board Vice President Bolton, please lead us off with your first 2 topics.
Thank you very much. Yes, priority one for me as we are developing this budget for this coming year, but also on any given day, is whether or not our kids are safe. We heard a lot today about the safety regarding many of our students, regarding state and federal policy. But as everyone will recall, in the midst of this past year, the city of Cincinnati divested themselves of the responsibility of having to either hire, train, or pay for crossing guards on public streets where we don't even have jurisdiction. And so I'm very anxious to hear from the superintendent how we are meeting this challenge and this burden, and where are we regarding filling all the appropriate spots? Do we believe that the spots that the city had were the ones that needed to be? Did they have enough? Just if you can give us a sense of our crossing guards that should be paid for by the city and trained by the city and hired by the city, that we're now hiring and training and paying for.
Absolutely. When we took on the responsibility of crossing guard and the conversations this summer, I believe we had several spots that had not been filled by the city at that time. We agreed to do somewhat of a transition through the month of December, such that by January 2025, we would have full responsibility for hiring the crossing guards. We did ask the city to continue to support us in the training of those crossing guards. And so I mentioned earlier Shauna McDowell in terms of offering sessions so that the orientation could be provided for people who are interested in becoming crossing guards for us, and that is happening. Do we have all the positions filled? No, but we definitely have interest. You may remember several weeks ago, we started a campaign around the hiring of crossing guards from our HR department, and we continue to work on that.
So how many crossing guards did the city suggest needed to be?
I'm going to ask Mr. Burkhardt to assist.
Absolutely. Thank goodness. Oh, wow.
Good evening. There were approximately 160 positions for crossing guards. We are actually to the point of we're trying to onboard for a total of 150, I believe. I think we'll have about 10 positions that we currently need to fill. We have had a lot of folks who have applied or expressed interest. If you remember, we had the yard signs that we're putting out at the intersections where we need crossing guards. We've actually done interviews on 2 of the television stations too, to talk about why crossing guards are so important to our district and why safety is so important to the students of our district. And that's really garnered a lot of folks to really dig in deep and say, yeah, this job is for me. So we're hoping that in the next 2 weeks or so, we can have all the crossing guards all the positions actually filled, and they will be all of our employees.
I think that's a great accomplishment, frankly. Did the city continue the training, or did they drop it?
They are no longer working with us on training. However, we did ask them if they could help us in de-escalation of drivers, and they would consider putting together a video training to help us do that. That is not our expertise, is how to handle drivers who may be combative or not want to stop for those crossing guards, or how to de-escalate those situations. We're asking the city, because they have that expertise with the police department, to help us with that training.
I'll reserve comment about the training or reference to the city council who actually seemed interested in it, but then rightfully spoke up and said, we really can't tell the city manager or the chief of police what to do. So I thought that was interesting. Keep up the great work. I mean, I've had several people that I know said, like a Cheviot placement, crossing guard people. I think this is a great opportunity for us to reach out to the community.
Yeah, and this is a work of love with the communications department, obviously HR talent, Shauna McDowell with overseeing the crossing guard locations and making sure they're onboarded. So it is a village coming together to solve the problem.
I personally don't think anything is more important than that. Thank you, thank you.
Well, I will say too, we have our joint meeting coming up. Perhaps we can bring this up and board members can attend and ask questions.
I'm
about
counting on Member Craig to take care of the city on this matter.
There we go. Board
And
Member Craig.
others.
I was going to say, I don't reserve the pleasure of not making the comment. I think this is exactly why I have struggles with our relationship with our city right now. Because these are the types of things that normal medium-sized to big city school districts don't have to worry about. And the fact that we are continuing to see the less of a investment in our school district from the city and not a reverse makes it more difficult. It makes things that we have to make decisions on, that we have to put funds towards, that we have to now use our time and effort towards with HR, more difficult for the district to do the work that we're actually tasked to do. And that's, I think we have wonderful friendships and relationships with the city council and with folks in the city. I know several people who work at the city who are people who I regularly interact with and connect with and whatnot. But I think it is very difficult to say that these are creating opportunities for us to do something in a more effective and efficient manner. I also want to say I appreciate the fact that we have been able to get 150 when I know a year and a half ago we were still at 110 or something like that, or 120. So it goes to show the effort to recruit and to bring people in just wasn't happening from the city. So again, partnerships matter and relationships matter, but I will probably say again, I think it's just very troubling that this is not a single thing. This is a pattern of stuff that will probably be the next one that I believe is actually on Board Member Bolton's list of inquiries. But I think this is something for us to acknowledge, and maybe again, when we have the conversation at the joint meeting, that it becomes a reality of not just talking about things, but actually some material result come from it. Because it is time that the superintendent is spending, it is time that her staff is spending, and it's time that everyone in the district is spending on doing things that really should be something that are, the safety of our kids is something that is a priority to both of us. And we had the police chief here demanding us to be stepping up. And again, I have a hard issue with, you come here and do that, and then we can't get you to even train the folks who are being tasked to slow down traffic so that they're safe, because we've had crossing guards hit by vehicles. So it is not like a mystery thing, it's something that's actually happened. And we can't get the police to even be invested in that little bit of effort. It's just a sad state for that.
And since we're giving a slight bit of commentary, I also want to direct the board members to an email that I sent you saying that the cost of details is rising for the district. As the public knows, we utilize details at our games. We utilize details for board meetings, but the cost is going up, and we're being asked to assume that cost as well. So there's a lot to discuss at this joint meeting. Does anyone have any questions for Board Member or Vice President Bolton's topic around crossing guards? Okay, next topic.
The next one? This one, too, is about the safety procedures, I believe.
District security review as second semester begins.
Right. As we started our second semester, our new calendar year, Wanted to see if there's an opportunity for the administration to update us, bring us some information, or at least start to prepare some sort of overall safety piece. On this, when I put this on the agenda a couple of weeks ago, we'd had another spat of shootings around the country that I think for some reason really gripped people. In part, I think one of them was in a private school, and another was by a girl was involved with one of those shootings. And I got an awful lot of concerns from people that I would see or hear from, again, about, do we have the metal detectors? Are we doing what we need to be doing? How secure are our children and our teenagers and our staff? Is there any kind of a report that can be filed or a sense of reassurance?
Yes, we definitely are utilizing the metal detectors, book bag searches every single day, security members walking the hall, security at each of our buildings. I am happy to prepare and bring you a detailed report around security in our school district if you give me a moment.
If I could, when we get to assignments, I'd like to make that assignment, and I think it can fall within executive session to a certain extent because of safety, but then a lot of it we would want to share with our public too. So it's a matter of what do we share with the public and what do we know, and which lends to the discussion earlier tonight about internally what are we doing about the safety of many of our students that have been referenced tonight. Some of that has to be very, very obvious and clear internally, but again, careful in an external sort of sharing. So that I'd appreciate it, and I'll save that for assignment.
Okay. Board Member Weinberg has withdrawn her, did you want to?
She's got to do it. It's a great idea.
Well,
Okay.
I don't even know where that topic came from, so it's not that I withdrew the item. I never submitted that. So
It
I
probably
just
was a
want
while
to
ago.
make that clear.
I know exactly what it is.
What is it?
When we had so many people coming and spreading the love and their concerns and issues regarding the consolidation and what have you, when we had so many people here, you had mentioned to me that indeed, wouldn't it be great if there's a way that we could start to, we always take a list of those people that are going to speak, but it'd be great to have sort of a list, if people were willing to sign up, a list of people that attend in our audience and maybe which school it's from or what their interests were, because it was a really good idea, I thought, to kind of start that engagement and start to have a whole wonderful cadre of parents and families and supporters. It was a great idea.
Well, I'm so happy that you remember, so thank you, because I don't.
But it was a great idea. If we could get people, we have so many wonderful people come, and we always need them, and we benefit
Absolutely.
from their presence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your
All
idea.
right. So does any board members have any questions of Board Member Weinberg's forgetful memory and Vice President Bolton for her crossing guards, et cetera? All right. Are there any assignments, board members?
I'd like that
Vice President
safety
Bolton.
report from our superintendent, and appreciate the earlier one we received earlier this evening.
Board Member Craig?
So one is just, I know we put together the assignment like sheet that had all the assignments on it or something like that, but I think maybe not the next board meeting, but maybe, or not February, but like maybe mid-February, the first week of March, we could just, as kind of an assignment to us or assignment to the president, just get an updated on kind of the status of those things, an updated list of what's actually out there. I think it's also helpful for us to remember what we've actually asked to be done. And then a second one, really focus on thinking about the upcoming levy conversation we had to have, to just make some time in the next few months for us as a board to also talk about that. I think we were also going to do it, we're doing it in budget and finance, but I think as a board, we can make an assignment to just place time on our agenda at some point to really go through what our decisions are going to be and what our needs are for our upcoming levy.
Gotcha. So that was going to be my assignment, is that we have our board admin receive a copy, if your staff does keep a copy of assignments, that we also keep a copy of that, who it's been assigned to, and then completion, so that the board members are aware that they will have asked previous questions and when it got answered, if at all, and we can keep a record of that. We started that a couple years ago, but it's time to revisit that. Sometimes you get the feeling like, I know I asked for that and I never got it.
I can ask the deputy to send it to the board tonight. We do keep track.
That sounds good. We're gonna probably have, I call them affectionately P2, which is Phyllis and Pat. We're gonna probably have them compile that list and send it out. So yes, you can send it to us, but we're gonna probably just have them send it out too. Okay, so the chair will gladly entertain a motion for adjournment. Is there a
So
second?
moved.
Let me get it out, my God. Unanimous consent.
Right.